This is all staying in.
A sipping.
Yeah, you're goddamn right. Hey, everybody, this is the History Boys, and it's a beautiful summer day here in Seattle. It technically is still spring, but it's climate change is roasting us.
Yeah.
We're in our air-conditioned studio filled with cats, and we're ready to give you an episode
Indeed.
about history.
Yes. Did you say who you were?
They know.
Yep, and I'm Maddie Moon, and I am a history boy as well. Roasting here.
Roasting.
We got a couple fans on us, and the air conditioner is doing its best.
It's unbelievably hot for the time of year.
It's the hottest day of the year, probably. So far.
Yeah.
In Seattle, like people like any place that actually gets heat are like, what is it, 75? And we're like, I think it's 79 outside.
Yeah, I think it's like 80 or so. Something like that out there.
Normally in May, it's like 55 and rainy.
Yeah.
So this is insane.
I don't like it to be over 66 degrees.
Yeah. This summer's going to be brutal. Yeah.
75 with the breeze.
Yeah.
Sunny with the breeze.
I want 66 inside and 45 with a heavy snow.
I thought you were going to say like heavy downpour.
Heavy downpour.
Sheets of rain.
Yeah, sheets of freezing rain.
Sleet.
Nah, 45 and pouring rain. That's what I like.
Yeah. It's going to be rough.
Well, I'm Jerry Nash, your humble history boy. As always, thank you so much for listening. And gang, this time we are talking about the Titanic Part 3. The last in our series about the Titanic, about everything that happened
the last
afterwards.
Third of the Titanic, so the back end with the...
yeah.
That's how we should have done it. All the things that happened at each part.
Yeah.
It's like, so this is what happened at the front of the ship.
Yeah.
This is what happened in the middle of the ship.
I honestly can't believe that this stuff sort of gets left out when people talk about the Titanic. This part is extremely fascinating.
I feel like this could be...
The aftermath.
This could be a movie starring Gary Oldman. You'd have a cast like that.
Yeah, you'd have a cast
like that. A whole bunch of British actors playing both British and Americans.
Yes.
No American actors.
Yeah.
This is your Titanic, too.
Right.
That's what it should have been. Yeah.
Not
Titanic just another boat.
Somebody already beat us to that. But by the way, the guy that plays J. Bruce Ismay is great casting in the movie.
He plays the bad guy in Jumanji.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a dual role.
The original Jumanji.
Yeah.
The one with...
the dual role guy.
Yeah. He plays the... he's trying to... is he trying to kill... Robert
Williams.
Robert
De Niro.
Wow.
Yeah, he's that English hunter,
safari
big game hunter.
guy.
Yeah, and he's also the boy's dad.
Right.
Yeah. I think it should have been Robert De Niro in that role
instead of Robin Williams.
Yeah.
He's like, why are you chasing after
To be
me?
honest, any movie starring Robin Williams, replace him with Robert De Niro, that's hilarious.
Even better with Awakenings, where it has Robert De Niro and Robin Williams and just switch them around.
They play each other's roles.
Him as the genie in Aladdin.
Yeah.
Like, you talking to me?
There you go. Yeah.
You rub the lamp.
These shoes.
No? What?
You want these shoes?
You want these?
You want me? Yeah? You want me to make you a prince, huh?
Yeah.
That's what you want? Yeah.
Oh,
that's what you want.
You tricked me out of one wish?
Yeah.
You're not going to trick me out of another wish. I'll tell you what.
Motherfucker.
Is that an okay wish?
No.
It's all right.
It's all right. Yeah, it's good.
I feel like this lands a lot better when you can see the face.
I know.
Imagine
a lot of it's in the face.
Yeah.
You kind of do this like frown smile and squint your eyes.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? It just lends itself to
and then
his
the
accent.
Voice just comes out.
Yeah. It just pops right out.
Yeah. Folks at home, you probably know the face we're doing.
Yeah.
You
knows
just go.
The face.
You've seen a picture of Robert De Niro before, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We all look like we just deep faked into Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
With just our face muscles.
Yeah. Well, last we left you, the Titanic had sunk in the North Atlantic, taking 1,517 people down with her. And the 706 that were saved were picked up by the Carpathia. That's last we left you. So we're just going to jump right in here, folks.
Where does the name Carpathia come from?
Carpathian Mountains.
Where's that?
In Romania.
Okay. That's where I've heard that.
Yeah, so like, remember when we talked about Vlad the Impaler? Carpathian Mountain, Wallachia.
Okay, yeah.
Transylvania's on the other side.
That's where I've heard that.
Yeah. Carpathian Mountains.
It's like we got captured by the Carpathians.
But what were the mountains named after?
I don't know. You got me on that one.
The Carpathian people. And they're the ones that
I
are
guess.
stealing these Titanic folks.
Yeah.
Right.
They're kidnapping them out of the
taking-
frozen ocean.
Yeah.
And they're going to feed them to their Lord and Savior, Dracula. Is that what this episode's about? Because that's fucking rad.
Hell yeah.
They just get fed to a vampire. That's yeah. Now
It's
we're
like,
talking.
could this day get any worse?
Yeah. Well, the New York Times at this time, they had one of the first like receivers, like to receive all of these like Marconi graphs, that are coming through.
Fancy.
And so like a page boy would like ring like basically there's like a shaft that would go through like the building and like they'd put in like the telegrams and then they'd shake it to like make a ruckus if it's like an emergency or like a breaking news.
Mister.
Yeah, Mr. Newspaper Man.
And he's got that hat and
Yeah.
bowl cut.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's dressed like a little Lord Fauntleroy.
Yeah. Dirty shirt.
Yeah.
Dirty pants.
He's also,
Or like like a newsie.
yeah.
Yeah.
A newsie, not Little Lord Fauntleroy.
That's very different. I just think that's funny.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Well, they got like the early like faint signals, right? That like, oh shit, something happened with the Titanic, and like it had gone down. Like they were like, we got all these distress signals, and then it went silent, and that's basically what they had to go on. And like after thinking for a minute, like, well, it's got to be true that it sunk. So like they decided to print it, right? Like right away.
Oh, that's good.
And,
good thing they were right.
Well, everyone was like, because there were these amateur Marconi operators that, it wasn't regulated yet. So like people could just pick it up and then like report on things that weren't necessarily true because they were spotty,
So
and
it's like
Prank
Twitter.
calling via telegraph.
again,
You can
Use
just,
your icebox
you
running.
can just say whatever
Yeah.
you want.
But like one guy, he got it that the Victoria was towing the Titanic back and everyone was saved because he misheard it. Like it was faint to begin with and then misheard the signal.
Yeah.
And so, like, White Star was, like, already admonishing the New York Times for printing that. And they're like, no, that's not true. That's not true. Everyone's okay.
Pinko
we don't know that
commie
for true.
rag.
Yeah, right? And, like, that old rag, the New York Sun, also admonished the New York Times for doing that. They were like, you don't know. You can't just print shit that you just, get, you know.
You can't just print things. It's-
Yeah, this isn't the Inquirer.
You can't print lies like we do.
Yeah, that's our thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, this is the height of yellow journalism, which does not help,
No.
right.
So yeah, the White Star Line was in denial. There were even because all of a sudden, the families that are there to like pick up their loved ones from the dock are like, what? And like, so they went to the White Star Line office and they're like, everything's fine, everything's fine. So when everything wasn't fine, they're like, you lied to us. Now they're mad.
Yeah.
You know what I
Right.
mean? The New York Times was vindicated when it finally came back that the Carpathia had picked up all the survivors, there was no one else, and that the Titanic had sunk. That's when, like, that's the next day, that
Okay.
they realized this, and they're like, oh shit, it's true. And, like, Taft sends a message to the Carpathia saying, like, hey, is my friend and military attaché, Major Archie Butt, is he on board?
Nice.
By the way, I'm also picturing him in the bathtub, and a servant comes with a phone on a platter.
Yeah.
And he's like, the Titanic is sunk, sir.
Yeah.
He's like,
What about my friend?
what about my friend Archie Butt?
Major Archie Butt.
Major Butt.
He's got a major Archie Butt. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, the Carpathia didn't answer the President of the United States.
Fuck him.
And most people were like, didn't answer the President of the United States. What a faux pas.
Screened his call.
Well, if it's so important, get out of the fucking bathtub. You can't.
Well, and a lot of people, this is a very contentious time. TR is running against Taft for the nomination, and they're like, if TR was president, he would have had the whole fleet around it. He wouldn't have just taken that from the Carpathia because Taft just didn't really do anything when they were silent.
If Trump was president,
And
he
they
would have the
ignored him.
military save the Titanic before it sank.
That's what
He would have dropped a nuclear bomb on the
Yeah, you know what? That's what
iceberg.
people kind of said about TR. They're like, if TR were president, the Titanic wouldn't have even sunk. And it's like, shut the fuck up.
It's Biden's
guys.
fault that the Titanic
Yeah,
sunk.
yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah, it was just adding to like Taft's sort of just unpopularity. So like everyone like scrambled too to like put together an investigation. You know, like when the Carpathia finally did show up, like to the docks to unload the survivors and their passengers, like they had already got like a Senate investigation team together to look after this. They started proceedings the next day.
Right.
So this happened immediately.
Yeah.
But when the Carpathia pulled up, like news people were everywhere. People were all crowded. There were so many people on these docks to see what happened because like this was a media frenzy, and like newspapermen were straight up saying like any dirty trick you can do to get on board, get me any interviews.
Oh,
he's
wow.
like we've heard that J. Bruce Ismay is on board. I want an interview with him. And everyone's like, what the J. Bruce Ismay survived? And like people were so mad about that like there was almost a lynching party already ready to hang him like when he like showed up.
Right.
You know, he needed like protection. Cops had to show up and set up barricades and shit. And like newspapermen like were getting in boats and trying to like get aboard and stuff, and like it really pissed a lot of people off what they were trying to do.
So people knew what he looked like?
Oh yeah.
He was
a famous guy.
Right.
And they printed pictures of him too.
yeah.
So
Oh, yeah, that doesn't
Like
help.
this piece of shit.
but like sadness and denial just swept the globe pretty much over this whole thing, because you know there were people from pretty much everywhere aboard the Titanic.
Right. Yeah.
And so it all of a sudden it dominated the headlines. You know, it pushed Taft and TR to like side columns. You know, and it would for a while. So everyone started hearing about it. Like there were people in Southampton that like where a lot of crew members and a lot of people from there were on board. Like whole streets and neighborhoods were just in mourning because they lost all of
Right.
these people like
Yeah.
in these full neighborhoods.
Yeah.
You know, so very heartbreaking for those people. It's very concentrated for
Yeah.
them, you know. One British MP from Manchester, J.P. Alexander, when he read the news, he dropped dead right then and there.
What?
Yeah, he read that the Titanic sank and just
He's like, well,
pop dead right there.
What?
that's the end of hope for the future.
Yeah, right. And even people of the time were like, this is where the new world, like the new time began. Like,
Yeah.
like even Jack Thayer said that like, I feel like there was a world pre, you know, April 15th, 1912, and then the world after.
Well, I do think that, I think there's a lot, like, it almost, yeah.
It's like a 9/11 sort of sea change event.
the prequel to World War One in a weird way.
In a weird way.
Not that it caused it, but like it was sort of a harbinger,
Yeah.
if anything.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, right away, you know, the British were pointing fingers at the Americans were pointing fingers at the British. You know, when they started saying, you know, all these rumors started flying around in the media too. And like, they were like, oh, you know, the people that were causing problems were those Dagos and Germans. And they did not appreciate that, as you can understand. And like all these laws that they're going to try to do, try to make to stop this from happening again, they involved like English, France, you know, England, France, and you know, but they left out the German Hun, you know, and they were mad about that, you know, and so there you can already sense the tension that like, no, you have to include them in these like shipping lane and like passenger line laws because they still come here.
Obviously,
you know?
you know, I don't think that the sinking of the Titanic caused World War One or any of that, or caused any of this, but it really showed all the little problems that were happening.
Yeah,
the
and-
same kind of problems that would lead to World War One.
And already like deep divisions and hatred between countries. And
Yeah, that's
things
the thing.
like
Is
that.
it's like, yeah,
Exposed those things, you know, brought them to light. So yeah, when it pulled up, like there's all these people, you know, they're trying to hold them back, and like they're like, oh, here they come, and it's just the passengers from the Carpathia. So everyone was like, oh.
Fuck these guys.
yeah, these fucking assholes.
Yeah, and so like they were like, oh shit, you know, as they're getting off. But then like this one woman, like comes off. She looks bedraggled, wide-eyed,
Yeah.
and like they all kind of quiet down for a second. And like one guy's like, "Are you a Titanic survivor?" She's like, "Yes." And they're like, "Oh shit!" Like it sunk with all these people aboard. Yeah. It's like, do you know if someone's alive? I'm like, no, I don't. I don't know who's alive and who's dead. I don't really know very much, you know. And
What
like
if she wasn't, and then and they were like, are you a Titanic survivor? You're just like,
No.
no, I'm just old and decrepit, apparently.
Yeah. Well, she was a younger woman. She
Yeah.
she kind of looked the way, as they describe it, she kind of looked like Rose coming off the boat. Like
At
her
the
hair
end.
was
See,
still kind of like,
I
you
was
know,
picturing
What?
Billy
Yeah.
Zane in drag. He's like, yes, I'm a woman. They let me on the ship.
Yeah. Well, there were rumors that started flying around like immediately, and these came from Carpathia passengers. They came from Titanic survivors, and these rumors were not accurate, and they turned into legend over time because like these papers printed these rumors,
Right.
Right, and it took a long time for like historians to parse things out and go, yeah, what they're saying isn't totally accurate. They just went through this horrible experience that you can't really expect them to remember everything
Right.
totally right, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So Billy Zane never wore drag.
No.
The actor Billy Zane might have at some point.
Right.
He's
The
he's
actor.
a cool guy.
Almost
Yeah.
certainly. There was a rumor that flew, I mean, because, you know, Bruce Ismay survived, that like, well, did he dress as a woman to get on one of these lifeboats to be, you know, was he that much of a coward, you know? And there was actually a third-class passenger that was like, I did. I actually did.
Absolutely, I did.
And
Yes.
Wow.
no one cared because he was third class.
Yeah, you're nobody. Get out of
Yeah,
here.
yeah, exactly.
Go dress as a woman wherever you want.
Yeah, yeah. But that's how he saved his own life, you know. But Ismay, you know, he got all this vitriol from people immediately, you know.
Yeah.
And he also he sent a cable ahead using like his like code name, you know.
Okay.
It's rich people did this all the time, to be like, hey, I need a boat to take me and all the crew back to Southampton. And I think he was just trying to look after the crew. You know what I mean?
Because he thought they were also going to get, like, shit on.
Well, they didn't. Their pay stopped the second that boat went down.
Yeah.
They need to get back home.
Yeah, all the money we were going to pay you was on the boat.
Yeah, seriously.
And now it's at the bottom of the ocean.
And so they have to get back home. They have to figure their lives out now. And I think he was just trying to get all that squared away.
Okay.
But to the American people at the time, it looked like he was trying to run. You know,
Oh.
run away from like the people that like wanted answers. You know.
Right.
Run away from the pain.
Yeah.
Run away.
Never mind.
A lot of these survivors, they were taken to hospitals afterwards, and I'll kind of get into more of this a little bit later. But a lot of them were you know, suffering still from the effects of hypothermia,
Right.
various injuries that this wreck caused them.
Right.
Harold Bride, like his feet were frostbitten, and he had to wrap them up. There's also a tennis player we'll get to later. His feet were frostbitten. They had to, they took him to hospitals. They were obviously suffering severe PTSD that they
Jesus, yeah.
They didn't know that back then.
They didn't know what
you
it was, right.
Yeah, no, he went mad, you know, kind of a deal.
Right.
Yeah.
But they, you know, a lot of people were quiet and nonverbal, you know.
Right.
It was horrible, you know. And the families that showed up, this is really tragic because on one side, you know, you'd get families that saw their loved ones alive. So over here, people would be smiling and you know, and hugging each other and full of joy, you know. But over here, when they didn't see their loved ones come off the boat, they were crying and sobbing
Right.
over here, you know. So there's a lot of mixture of emotions on the deck, or on the docks themselves, and then those people like refused to like accept the worst, you know, that their loved ones were dead, and like they were like, well, are they on an iceberg floating
yeah,
out
yeah.
there, you know, by themselves?
Oh, boy.
Are they in one of the watertight compartments, just suffocating to death on the bottom of the ocean? You know, and like they even mentioned this to like the head of the William Alden Smith, the head of the investigation, senatorial investigation committee, and so he kind of felt an obligation to look into those things. Like, okay, is it possible that people are on a life or on a iceberg somewhere waiting to be saved, or is it possible that people could survive in a watertight chamber? You know, which of the time people were like, these are ridiculous questions. You know what I mean? And especially Britain, and all the British press, they like took him down for that. They were like, fuck this guy, he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about, because that's impossible. And it's like, dude, like families asked him about these things. I felt like, like he wanted to clear that up for them to make
Right.
sure that they could lay that to rest, those hopes to rest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Something that was also kind of horrible, that was an unintended consequence, is that this idea of women and children first kind of dealt a blow to the feminist movement of the time. Because they were like, oh, these heroic men, they were not, no one asked them to give up their lives for this, but they did anyway.
No, they did.
Because the law of the sea.
They turned them away.
Well, and a lot of men did survive. So come on, and
Right.
they're like, oh, so these feminists do you want to go down with the ship? Do
boy.
you want to do that? You had to go first. Like the men had to be the heroes, and like you can hear like Mary Shelley like roll her eyes, like, dude, maybe if you gave up trying to be a hero all the goddamn time and realize that like women could also be heroes,
Right.
then maybe you would realize that this whole dichotomy is stupid.
Well, there is a certain. I know Maddie and I were kind of talking about this off the show, but like the idea of like the women and children's things first is actually like it is inherently misogynist.
Yeah.
Like you're saving the weak ones and
Right.
and the ones that can make more babies, right?
Right,
Like
right.
You're not doing it out of this sort of heroic loyalty. You're doing
No.
it because
It's because
you're
you don't think they can survive
Yeah.
what you can as a
well,
man.
they can't be heroes like men. can
Right,
be,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So it's like,
Yeah.
the argument doesn't even make fucking sense to say.
No.
Because it's like you created that version of yourself.
Well, and there was one woman at the time where they asked her. She was a suffragette. And they asked her. I didn't write down her name, but she was like, "Well, if it was, I mean, the laws of men made this ship possible. Like, Mary Shelley talked about the machinations and of men, women, children suffer. It's like, and there lacks, sea laws and like this giant boat and all these things came together and like went down, like you were saying, Maddie.
Yeah, it's like an ego
It's like the
thing.
male ego
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. Like it's
Yeah.
a metaphor
that makes
for
a lot
that.
of-
And like they were like, well, what about you? And it's like I would have made laws for enough lifeboats and all
Yeah.
these things.
Right.
I would have done
The
that.
answer is regulation.
Yeah,
but like,
regulation,
But
yeah.
these men, this male ideology had to make the biggest ship ever with the
Yeah.
biggest whistle ever.
and
it's-
refused to believe that it could sink.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they were the heroes.
Yeah,
Right.
honestly, I think that you mentioned the Mary Shelley thing, but I'm like, the Titanic
goes
kind of
very-
is the same story as Frankenstein,
In a lot of ways. In a lot of ways. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's very
In
interesting.
a lot of ways. And it really, once the numbers started coming in, people started seeing a pattern that they weren't cool with. And that was that 201 out of the 324 first class passengers survived. And only
fuck.
Holy shit.
181 out of the 708 third class passengers survived. That's quite the difference.
Yeah.
And no matter which way you slice it, it was better for you if you were rich.
Yeah, and
You know what I mean?
100%. And
Yeah.
it's like women and children first, but
Yeah, right.
first class women and children first.
Yes,
Then
exactly.
first class men.
yeah.
Then
and then
Second class women.
second class women,
And so forth.
Yeah, exactly.
let's make sure we get getting the lines in that order.
Yeah. Joseph Conrad, being Joseph Conrad, he had to respond to this. He was an author. He wrote Heart of Darkness
Oh yeah,
about being in the Congo. He was
Yeah.
a riverboat captain in
Yeah.
the Belgian Congo, and he was an expert on seafaring ships. And he weighed in a lot during this time about like loose regulations on sea travel and stuff like this. He had a few things to say that I think are great because it's scathing. He's like, you fucking pieces of shit. Like, here it is. Quote,
Oh, I can't wait.
I'm not a sentimentalist. Therefore, it is not a great consolation to me to see all these people bereaved as heroes by the penny and halfpenny press. It is no consolation at all. In the worst extremity, the majority of people, even of common people, will behave decently. It's a fact of which only the journalists don't seem aware. Hence, their enthusiasm, I suppose. But I, who am not a sentimentalist, think it would have been finer if the band of the Titanic had been quietly saved instead of being drowned while playing whatever tune they were playing, the poor devils. I would rather they have been saved to support their families than to see their families supported by the magnificent generosity of the newspaper subscribers because they raise money. There is nothing more heroic in being drowned very much against your will than in dying of colic caused by the imperfect salmon in the tin you bought from your grocer. And that's the truth. The unsentimental truth, stripped of the romantic garment the press has wrapped around this most unnecessary disaster. End quote. I really like that.
That he ripped them to fucking pieces.
Yeah. I've one other quote for you, too. This is about the lifeboats and just the fact that it's the biggest ship ever, you know? And, like, he's like, it's ridiculous to build something like this and then not put enough lifeboats on it. That's stupid. So he goes, quote, "If you can't carry or handle so many boats, then don't cram quite so many people on board. It is simple as that. This problem of right feeling and right conduct, the real nature of which seems beyond the comprehension of ticket providers. Don't sell so many tickets, may virtuous dignitary. After all, men and women, unless considered from a purely commercial point of view, are not exactly the cattle of the Western Ocean trade that used some 20 years ago to be thrown overboard on an emergency and left to swim around and around before they sank. Because, they used to do that. Like, oh, we have cattle aboard, then they throw them over if the ship is sinking or whatever. You say people are not like that. If you can't get more boats, then sell less tickets. Don't drown so many people on the finest, calmest night that was ever known in the North Atlantic, even if you have provided them with a little music to get drowned by.
Jeez.
Sell less tickets. That's the solution of the problem, Your Mercantile Highness."
That's amazing. As you're reading those quotes, a lot of the comparisons we made about, like, the masculine ego is sort of at play here, but it's like, that's kind of what capitalism is in general. And if you want to separate us, bashing men, that's fine, but it's like, the thing is, so many men follow this idea of, like, maximize everything, burn everything for the sake of maximum profit and maximum,
go to the hill.
Yeah, everything.
Turn
and that's
it up
sort
to
of,
11.
That's exactly that idea is what toxic masculinity is.
Right.
That's what inherently creates capitalism. Right. Like, just maximize it all.
Yeah.
Everything that gets in the way of that is a problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Claw your way up to that maximum.
And it's like the idea that the Titanic is a perfect fucking metaphor for that. Like, from this era trying to maximize everything.
Yeah.
We didn't learn our lesson clearly, but that leads to World War I. That leads to World War II. That way of thinking, and it leads to late stage capitalism now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's kind of there's a reason that philosophical idea is in line with the male ego.
Right.
Right.
You're right.
That's what's causing this. We don't have to necessarily say that, like, oh, men are the problem, but it's like that way of thinking, that philosophy is.
Yeah. And when they're the only ones with any say in making up all of this stuff and how it's all
they're the
gonna
ones that
work.
keep saying it,
Right. Yeah.
and the ones that keep doing it, like,
Right.
He also he thought it was so ironic and crazy that the ship would have been fine if you just rammed it head on. And he's like, oh, so is this what we're just gonna do now? We're just gonna ram icebergs head on? He's like, that's stupid. He's like the fact that this ship was so big, he even says that its iron hull stood as much of a chance against an iceberg as a biscuit tin. He was like, dude, just because it's big doesn't mean it's totally strong against an iceberg.
Do you really think it could have smashed through the iceberg? I feel like it would have crushed it.
It would have crumpled the nose. But it's like, he's like, oh, so we're just gonna ram them head on? Like, he's basically pointing out, like, it's the right idea to turn, right?
Right.
Of course it is.
You shouldn't be going so fast either. Like, he's pointing that out and like,
Well, there's a billion things they should have done differently.
exactly.
Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, the solution isn't let's just ram icebergs head on now.
Right.
The solution is have the right amount of lifeboats, so if you do turn, which is what you should do, and you end up in this situation, you don't end up with
I do think it's funny
that many
that
people dead.
Out of everything that they're like, we could have done right. And again, it goes to that sort of maximize everything, turn it up to 11 attitude, where it's like, well, the real solution would have been to ram it head on.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's
you don't look at lifeboats, you don't look at tickets, you don't look at like every other problem that this thing had.
It's like, no, this is this is what we should have done.
We should have. We should have dropped a nuclear bomb on
on the iceberg. Yeah. Blown it to bits.
Why don't we just ruin the climate, so there are no icebergs.
Yeah. Well, like like the asteroids coming to Earth, right?
Yeah.
They'll always say like, "Oh, shoot a nuke at it." It's like, yeah, that's
rains,
great.
Now it's going to rain nuclear
Smaller
fallout
asteroids.
all over the Earth.
Yeah.
and smaller
smaller asteroids.
Turn it into a shotgun of nuclear asteroids.
Right.
Yeah. No, they're
Blast that at you.
irradiated asteroids.
Oh my god.
I'm not a scientist, but
Yeah.
that's a funny idea.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's exactly what would happen. Maybe it would make them smaller and they would burn up in our atmosphere.
Well, that's what that Don't Look Up movie was about.
Yeah.
Although I don't know if they talked about.
Yeah.
I don't remember if they talked about shooting a nuke at it.
Or Nope is also Don't Look Up, which is about
kind
the obsession of watching violence.
Yeah, watching violence happen.
I think you can make a comparison. I just watched that movie. It's very good.
It's very good. I watched it last night. That's very good.
My review on Letterboxd was Gordy's cool. That's the ape.
If you know, you know.
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything else.
A chimp.
Like I said, the investigation began immediately the day after the survivors arrived, which, whew, that's quite the whiplash that these people are going
so
through.
are they like...
Well, they have to send out subpoenas, right? And they're not going to subpoena all the passengers,
Okay.
but they are going to get affidavits from the ones that they can get, right? So that they can. But there are some people that they have to subpoena, and that's a lot of the crew,
Yeah.
and especially J. Bruce Ismay.
Yeah.
He would be the first person that they
Well,
called.
the crew are just as much victims as anybody. Like,
Yeah.
you're not even getting any of that sweet food. You're just shoveling coal the whole goddamn time.
Yeah.
Well, they survived because they were doing the lifeboats, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that was.
they had to know that, that
Right.
crew could like row the lifeboats,
Right.
man the
I
lifeboats.
do feel like that makes sense. I mean,
It
it's
does.
not necessarily... The fairness would be there'd be enough lifeboats easily for everyone
Right.
in the first place.
Right.
Like, that would be fairness.
Yeah,
You know?
and if they had an alarm system or something to actually launch the lifeboats, they even do have.
create a whole... create a system of regulation around this.
around
too.
emergency situations. Yeah, exactly.
No, that cuts a hole in our bottom line, and that's not what we're about.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So William Alden Smith, the Republican senator from Michigan, he was the one that headed up this committee. He was actually effectively an independent. People from his party didn't really like him. He fought all the time with Henry Cabot Lodge, very prominent people, a TR guy, very prominent people of his time about all sorts of things. So he was sort of the man to do this. And he was a pretty erudite kind of guy, you know what I mean? Pretty fair dude. And something that was very troubling to pretty much everybody that they heard right away from a Mrs. Cardeza, who was a survivor. She said that she was on the boat with Ismay and that he had handpicked the crew and didn't help row, and he was just an asshole the whole time. Turns out Mrs. Cardeza was on a different boat, but this rumor was already out. You know what I mean? Didn't find that out until much later, so they had to get him on the stand. And when he was like, first of all, we want to say how sorry we are, and da-da-da-da-da, and he talked about being on the last boat that was launched, and the fact that he looked around and there were no women and children, and they're like, how could it be that
There was
so many
none.
women and children did die, and you
Right.
looked around and there weren't any? And he's like, I don't know. They weren't around the area, and it was the last boat, and they told me to get in.
Right.
What do you want? You know what I mean?
I don't think he's wrong to do that.
I really don't
Yeah.
think he's wrong. He really got scapegoated. He really did.
I mean, I feel like he's just kind of being targeted because of like all the there is an issue that so many first class
Right.
passengers were survived, and he's like the highest echelon of that idea just
Yeah.
because of who he is. But
Yeah.
Also, he helped build it, right?
That's what I mean.
So,
he was
like,
the managing director of the White Star Line, and they're like, were you telling the captain to go faster? And he was like, because you wanted, this to be the biggest and baddest. And he was like, no, I never did. I didn't. I swear to God, I never did. And they're like, did you know about the ice? Because here's the thing, is the White Star Line could be sued by everyone if he was aware of negligence.
Right.
It's one thing if he was negligent. But if he was aware of negligence, then they could be sued. So
Right.
that he had to prove basically that he was not aware of anything happening.
I mean, how aware was he?
Well, some people said that he knew about the ice warnings. He denied this.
Though I'm willing to accept that he knows to deny everything.
Right.
Like,
yeah, totally.
you know, I don't know what he would have known or not, but like the solution for him, deny,
Oh,
right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
just don't. Yeah.
Totally. And like they interviewed like the captain of the Carpathia, and I'll get to that in a second. But they were like, do you know, like, does anybody, I don't care who they are, does anybody tell a captain what to do on board the ship? Does anyone do that? They're like, he's like, no. No. The captain is the end all be all. Like, there's no one that would ever influence a captain's decision while we're on the water. And he's like, well, there you go, you know? Like, even if Ismay would have said anything, it was up to the captain anyway.
So the White Star Line is trying to be like, it's the captain's fault. We're not to blame.
Sort of, right. But they don't want to, like, sully his reputation either. Because
Right.
he was a beloved captain. Although it was pretty much his fault. I'm
Right.
sorry. You know, there was all these mistakes that the captain could have mitigated. But instead of, you know,
I mean,
rubbing elbows
how
with the
responsible is the
first class
captain
people.
for the number of lifeboats?
Yeah, I not really responsible
what I
for that.
mean?
He's responsible for the speed.
There's so many things that went wrong that, and
Right.
there's a diffusion of responsibility here.
Yeah, like White Star Line, come on, was responsible for at least something.
Yeah, I know.
Like-
I
Yeah,
agree.
definitely.
I agree. They asked him. They're like, they asked him about how the ship went down, and he was like, I didn't see the ship go down. And they're like, you didn't look at it? And he was like, no, I didn't look at it. And like, you can tell that he just felt so fucking horrible that he didn't want to see it. You know, but they
Yeah,
were
that
like,
makes sense.
"What do you mean you didn't look at it?
It would have looked cool as shit. What's
yeah.
wrong with you?
Yeah, and it's like sometimes, you know, this happened a long time ago, but their insensitivity is
Right.
is
Yeah.
pretty tantamount.
This is the biggest moment of your life, and
Yeah.
you're off somewhere missing it.
Yeah, you're not looking at your biggest and baddest creation fucking
You're
sink
not-
with you on a fucking lifeboat.
People
you know,
screaming
like,
and
people
dying.
screaming and
You're not hyper focused on your life's greatest
yeah.
failure.
And he
Yeah.
was rowing. You know, he did help row. So that's something. You know what I mean?
I don't think he's the most guilty person.
He's really not.
I
But
think
he was
that's the thing. Is I
scapegoat.
think the lack of regulations are part of the problem. Who do you blame on that specifically?
Well, you'd
Like-
blame the Board of Trade,
Yeah.
because you know their laws were out of date, and that's what the Americans were doing. They were like, the British Board of Trade is to blame, and they were like, you know, wait a minute here, you know, it's the White Star Line, it's the you know,
Well, it's like-
so yeah,
if they had regulations that somebody like pulled back on,
right,
that would be somebody. But if you never had the regulations in the first place,
right. Well, and they had more lifeboats than what the regulation told them to.
well, that's the problem.
Oh,
That's
really?
the point.
Yeah.
You mentioned that.
Yeah.
That's my point. Is the lack of regulation is part of the problem.
Exactly.
The fact that they had more lifeboats than the regulations called for is a problem with those regulations.
Yeah, it's still not enough.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
Like
they had 20, but they were only required to have 16.
Legally, they're scot free. So these
Yeah.
people are innocent, since it's not
Yeah.
illegal.
In what instance would you only need like some lifeboats?
It had to do with the tonnage of the ship. If it was over a certain ton, you had to have this many.
So
If
it had
was
nothing
over-
to do with the passengers.
nothing to do with the passengers. No. And I think
Oh
a
my
big
God.
reason for that is it's before a time of like cruise ships and
Yeah.
stuff like
Right.
that.
In
you
some
know what I mean?
cases, you
Right.
could almost blame just lack of forethought.
Oh yeah.
you know,
yeah, they were
like-
just out of date laws.
Yeah, like-
you know.
They didn't need cruise ship regulations
Yeah.
yet.
Well, like what
Right.
Joseph Conrad was saying, like these passengers are not cattle. That if the boat's sinking, you just toss them out in the water.
But you're
You know.
using regulations that are based off of that kind of thing.
Exactly.
You're using regulations based off of like other ships that we're talking about that weren't big luxury liners. They were intended to
Yeah.
go faster and
Right.
carry more cargo.
Right. Exactly.
Lifeboats were like for
You
the
don't
crew.
need lifeboats for cargo.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right. After that, they called Captain Rostrum, Carpathius.
Captain Ron.
Yeah. Yeah. Guess I'll have a margarita. Captain Rostrum of the Carpathia, when he recounted the story of like zigzagging through the ice at full steam to try to get there and help all these people, and he talked about the people frozen and bobbing up and down in the water and all of these things, there was not a dry eye in the house. Because this is the first time they're ever hearing this story.
Right.
You know, of like the humanity, the mass of humanity in the water.
Well, it's like the day after it happened, right? Or
It's
couple
like
days.
a couple of days after it actually happened, yeah.
Right.
And there was, not a dry eye in the room. They asked him about Marconi censorship because they didn't answer the wire from Taft.
Right.
And he was like, look, man, there was a lot going on.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
He's like, I didn't censor shit. I didn't
Yeah.
do fucking shit.
I didn't bring shit.
I didn't do any of this shit.
I've been waiting for years for a hit.
Yeah. So he sent an apology to Taft, and they ended up awarding Captain Rostrum with the American Cross of Honor for his role in saving the survivors, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
The next guy that they called to the stand was the most senior officer that survived, which was Charles Lightoller. And I actually made a mistake. It was actually Harold Bride, the Marconi operator, that survived. He was the one underneath the collapsible. Charles Lightoller was knocked away by the falling funnel, and he went under the water. But when he came back up, he came out and jumped on top of the overturned collapsible.
Jesus.
Harold Bride had to
That's
swim
like an action
underneath it.
scene.
Yeah.
Straight
yeah,
up.
it's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
I feel like that funnel knocking me out. I'm dead.
Oh,
I
totally.
don't know how you could survive that. Yeah,
Well,
that's insane.
Some people were killed by it. Some people were saved by it.
right, because
you know,
They like
right.
sent them closer to the lifeboats.
To the lifeboats.
That's
yeah,
crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah. He gave kind of short and terse answers, and I think it was because he wanted to protect the memory of his captain.
Right.
And he wanted to still stay in good with the White Star Line because that was his employer. He didn't want to lose his job.
He's like, I ain't ever heard of no Titanic.
I heard of shit. Yeah.
I gotta get back out
Yeah,
on another boat
I didn't see
ASAP.
nothing.
I didn't see nothing. I didn't hear nothing. I don't know what you're talking about.
They asked him about
He had this thick accent.
they asked him about the lifeboat drills and the testing of equipment, the lifeboat capacities, and like he was like, "Yep, nope, everything was ship shape, you know."
By the way, I feel like that was the same as my Robert De Niro
Yeah,
impression.
yeah.
That was Robert De Niro on the stand, like, I
Yeah, I
don't know.
thought that's what you were
Didn't see
doing.
nothing.
I know.
Yeah,
I
did,
didn't
yeah.
even think about it, but it just went right back into Robert. I didn't see nothing. I don't know.
Yeah. They kind of pressed him on those things, you know, on the fact that they only tested a couple of lifeboats. Just all these little things about the lifeboats.
They're like, we
you
don't
know.
need to spend money testing lifeboats on an unsinkable ship. You're
pretty
the
much-
stupid one.
Yeah, yeah.
Except it sank, so.
Well, because they did
Right.
think that the Titanic was its own
Like, what are we wasting
lifeboat,
time on this?
You know?
Yeah.
They talked to him about water temperature tests. This is kind of an old thing. Like Shackleton still used this.
Shacklestein?
Shackleton still used this method. Basically, you lower a bucket of water, or a bucket into the water, you pull it up, you take the temperature, and it's just to gauge, like, how close I am to ice, or something like that. Because there was one
Interesting.
lady...
Does that work?
Sort of. There was one lady that said that when they did it, they didn't touch the water, and they just poured water in and took the temperature.
Yeah,
Like, it
that
didn't
makes
actually
perfect.
go in the water?
Yeah, that makes perfect fucking sense.
Yeah,
No.
and he was like, well, it's not accurate, which, okay, but of the time, I suppose you still have to do it. And then he was like, no, we did that, though. We did all of that. And they're like, well, what's it for? And it's like, well, it's supposed to tell you if you're near ice or not. And it's like, well, what temperature was it? And he's like, just above freezing. And they're like, so you're near ice then, right? And he's like,
Yeah.
I guess so.
We did
it's
it,
cold.
though.
The water's cold.
Well,
yeah.
wasn't there ice everywhere? Like, what the fuck is that
That's
I
supposed
mean,
to
they
do?
got ice warnings. They got all sorts. That day, they got ice warnings.
Yeah, that doesn't necessarily mean like
Yeah,
you're
and
gonna hit an iceberg and sink.
well, and when they pressed him on the ice warnings, he got really cagey, you know, and like he was talking about like, you know, the speed and everything, and how the captain just didn't really reduce speed or anything like that, and he was like, I don't know, like it wasn't really up to me, you know.
Right.
He got really cagey about that. Ismay actually, during his testimony, Ismay actually left the room and paced in the hallways and chain smoked.
Yeah.
And like he like said a few like comments to reporters that would come back to bite him in the ass. Like, oh, ice warnings and speed, they're talking about all this stuff, and they're like, oh, so you knew about ice warnings and stuff. And he's like, no, I just, it came back to him a little bit.
Yeah, he should have gone
'cause
with
he was
the
nervous.
same. I didn't know shit. I
didn't see shit.
don't know.
I don't
Never
know
heard of
what-
no Titanic. I don't know what you're talking
Yeah.
about. I just like
Don't
doing
hear
that
this
voice. It's a
shit.
lot of fun.
Yeah.
I just want to do that all day.
Yeah. So he also recounted his survival while he was on the stand. Senator Smith, sent out his They called them Michigan Minutemen, and it was the Michigan sheriff Joe Bayless. They sent him out to find like the crewmen, like not the officers, but like the crewmen, and like go and like eavesdrop on these guys' conversation, and like see if we have to subpoena them.
Right.
And so, like, he went out and eavesdropped on these guys, and they were, like, telling horror stories about, like, being, like, there's no binoculars, there's nothing like that, And so they subpoenaed all of them. And then they realized, like, oh, shit, there was a boat, the Laplander, that came to pick them up and take them back to England. And they're like, some of the guys that we should have subpoenaed are on that boat. So they straight up, like, went over to the boat and were like, hey, guys, we gotta take you back. Here's a subpoena from the United States government. And they're like, God damn it. Bring them back. And when they came in, people were like, oh, shit. Because they were still wearing their jumpers that said Titanic on it. And they're like, whoa. Like, it's spooky to kind of see stuff like that, after
like
knowing what happened. Yeah. It's weird, yeah. One of these guys was Harold Bride, the one Marconi operator that did survive.
Okay.
When they brought him in like a stretcher and stuff because like his feet were bound. He had frostbite. He was still recovering.
Oh, was he like laying down?
Yeah.
I thought it was like
they propped him in a like a big overstuffed chair.
Like Hannibal Lecter with the mask.
Yeah. They wheel him in and set him up.
Stand him up, yeah.
Yeah, like on a dolly. Yeah. He talked about the ice warnings and about he's like, well, we sort of passed them on, I guess, But there wasn't a clear way of dealing with them, like getting them to the captain. There was no, like, procedure.
Oh, that's good.
Like, something that came from this is, like, no, you have to take these messages to the bridge right away, this regulation of, like, you have to do this now, instead of just setting it aside. Like, okay. Anyway, He also talked about their working conditions, the fact that they worked long hours, the fact that some ships would, like the Marconi operator, would switch off and go to sleep, like on the California.
Right.
And it's like, no, if you have one of these machines, you got to keep it going all night, like 24 hours, so you have to work around the clock. He also talked about the fact that their big wireless system broke.
Right.
And they were supposed to wait until they got on shore for a licensed Marconi operator to fix it. But they disobeyed that order and fixed it and saved way more lives because it had a longer distance.
Really?
It would not have reached the Carpathia. It would have reached the California, but not the Carpathia. Wow. So it ended up saving their lives.
So that was something that
they broke the rules. Yeah. Broke the rules and helped them. As these proceedings are going, like, they're getting all of these letters and, like, mail and wires from all over the country, like, saying, like, I know why it went down, and, like, they're crazy, some of them are crazy, some of them are proposing marriage to, like, the captain of the Carpathia, or, like, all these people that are testifying, or
weird.
William Alden Smith, and, like, super weird. Some people are, like, Smith is asking these, like I said earlier, these stupid questions like, what's an iceberg made of? Do you know what an iceberg's made of?
Ice.
Well, that's what one guy says. Harold Lowe, he said, ice, I suppose, sir.
I suppose it's ice,
I suppose it's ice, sir. Yeah,
You
but,
think?
In Britain, they were like, what a fucking clown,
Yeah.
It's frozen water, idiot.
Yeah. But he was just doing it to be thorough, he's trying to be thorough. They moved the investigation from New York to D.C. Just to kind of help it out.
Funsies.
They had to stay in New York, because it happened the day afterwards. But they moved it back down. This is when they started getting, like, the surviving passengers' affidavits that they read into the record about their experiences. One thing I thought was interesting is that the officers refused to be quartered in the same hotel or on the same floor of the hotel as the rest of the crew. Like, there's still, like, this, like, caste system that's still in place, Just like, oh, shut the fuck up,
Really?
guys.
After all that?
Well, and, like, they even brought up, like, E.J. Smith is sleeping with this crew on the bottom of the fucking ocean,
Yeah,
Like,
right, exactly,
now,
Like, you're not...
Yeah,
oh, my God.
Yeah.
Those crew quarters are haunted as fuck.
Yeah.
And in D.C., like, the room got so packed with people
Right.
wanted to see it live. You know, like they even brought lunches and stuff with them. They were moving the tables by themselves. Like that, they had to call in the police and like drag some people out. Like one lady, they drug her out and she was kicking and screaming, and she was like, "I'm the wife of a congressman. I'm the wife of a congressman."
Nice.
They're like, "Fuck you, lady, get out."
Like, yeah, you
We
can
don't
just say
give a
that.
shit.
Yeah, yeah.
Turns out, like, you can just
Yeah.
say that. You might not.
And
be-
even if you are,
Right.
like, fuck
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
Joseph Boxall, there's actually on like he actually recounts this on like there's audio of him recounting this stuff, which is really fascinating. He also talked about the lifeboat drills because it was his job to plot the location, like the locations of icebergs that you got the ice warnings from.
Okay.
Like it was his job to do that, and so he dutifully did, but then nothing really came of it.
Yeah.
You know what I
Right.
mean? So he's like, you know,
I did it.
And when they were sinking, he was the one that was like, "I think that's a boat out there," talking about the California. He's like, "I don't know, 5 miles away," and they were like, 5 miles away? Like, you can definitely see them from the crow's nest from there. Like, did you signal them? And he's like, "Oh yeah, no, we signaled them with like the lamp, like the light, you know,
Yeah.
the, you know, and like they didn't get anything back. Like we shot the
They were
rockets.
shooting flares.
Yeah,
all
we shot
night.
the rockets, like distress rockets, and like they didn't do anything.
Yeah, they were
you
just
know?
like, hey, they're shooting rockets over there.
Yeah, why are they shooting rockets at night? Yeah, that's straight up what they said.
Did anyone on the Californian like end up having to like pay for basically ignoring and
Well, at this point, the Californian is a mystery ship. They didn't know it was the Californian yet.
oh right okay.
Oh,
When word
interesting.
got back, then they were like, "We need to subpoena the captain of the Californian and some of his like higher officer, you know, some
Yeah.
of his higher
Yeah.
officers because they
Yeah.
needed to know." And when they asked, you know, them again, there's no emergency procedures in place.
Right.
So like, they were like, "I don't know why they were firing rockets." And it's like, "Did it ever occur to you that they were distress rockets?" And it's like, "Not really." And like, "I'm sorry, our Marconi guy went to sleep. You know, he said, you know, shut up. So, you know, we didn't know." And like his officer that saw the rockets was like he only saw that because he like went up for a smoke like in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And was like, "What the fuck?" And he's like, "Captain, like the Titanic looks weird." And he's
Looks
like,
weird.
we'll get it later. You know?
Really? Wow.
And a lot of people like shifted a lot of blame to them. You know what I mean?
I mean, it just does seem like absolutely insane to see that and like not
Yeah.
for a second think that it could be anything
Other
than-
an emergency.
right.
Yeah, and like he, you know, the captain also downplayed like, you know, because people like Hitchens and Harold Lowe and Joseph Boxall, you know, they'd be like, "Yeah, it was about 5 to 10 miles away." The captain of the Californian was like, "We were like 19 miles away." The reason why I said 19 is because that's just outside of the range
Oh, he
where
knew.
you could see, you know, see and get the Marconographs and stuff. He knew that.
We were 19.1 miles away.
Yeah, just
Right.
outside of the range.
Right.
He was covering his own ass for sure.
Yeah.
And it's hard to place blame on them just because the regulation isn't there. Like you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
You know?
I
Well,
can,
it's like, yeah.
I mean,
Sorry.
I can understand, like, I guess maybe how you wouldn't think anything of the flares, but it is really, really hard for me to
It's, yeah, like, I mean, it's hard for me to,
imagine. But I guess, I mean,
I try to put it, like, put myself in the idea of, like, without any of our retrospect.
Right,
like,
exactly.
if you're in a situation where, like, why, that's not a thing people do.
Right.
Are the rockets there for
even if you
distress?
had an
Yeah.
inkling, even if you
Yeah.
had, like, a small
still.
inkling, why would you not, like, try?
fuck it.
Right. Right. Like,
Like-
why wouldn't you?
Be like,
Yeah.
hey, maybe we should turn our Marconi machine back on.
Right, at
Well,
the
I guess
worst.
he tried signaling, but they didn't get any response from the Titanic at that point.
They were too busy dying
yeah.
Yeah, right. That's right.
and
Like they-
sinking.
it's just weird that like they both signaled each other, but like neither could really see the other signal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. You know,
I don't
like,
know what 5
I don't
miles
know.
away looks like out there.
Yeah, I don't really either. Like I don't know. Like on the ocean, I know you can see further,
Yeah.
but like I don't know. It's and like they do press like the crewmen like how far away would you say? And they're like I don't fucking know, dude.
I mean, they
You
couldn't
know?
see the iceberg right in front of them, so.
Well, Frederick Fleet, the guy that saw the iceberg,
Right.
he was also really cagey for the same reasons.
Yeah.
But, you know, he's a lowly crewman, you know, and he
Right.
spoke with like this Cockney accent, you know, and The stenographer was like...
He was the ship's chimney sweep.
Yeah.
Basically.
Those big funnel things.
He was nervous. He had like his ragged hat in his hands.
Sorry. It's like, I don't know, sir.
Yeah. But they asked him
I'm
about...
just a lowly chimney sweep.
Yeah, I'm just a chimney sweep.
I'm just an iceberg spotter.
Just an iceberg spotter. He was, nervous and cagey, and he recounted seeing the berg. He talked about no binoculars, and they were like, could you have seen it better with binoculars? And he's like, I guess. And they're like, there you go. That's it. And he's like, why didn't you have binoculars? And he's like, well, they said there weren't any. And it's like, who said that? And he, like, put his head down, and he's like, Mr. Lightholder, sir. Like, he's standing right over there, and he's like...
That asshole.
Yeah, and they were like, listen, it's your maiden voyage, you forget a few things, okay?
This guy like is in the mob.
It's Robert De Niro again. So we forgot a few lifeboats. So what?
What of it? Yeah.
What?
I forgot the binoculars too, so what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to just keep doing that voice.
I know,
and I'm
right?
like, let's keep going.
There was this
Just do the rest of the episode in that voice.
This guy, Louis Klein, he was a Hungarian sailor. He hit up William Alden Smith, and he was like, I just came over on the Titanic, and I know for a fact that those crewmen in the crow's nest were intoxicated and sleeping. And they did a little digging, and they were like, you weren't on the Titanic, motherfucker.
What? He was just a pot
He
stirrer.
was just just fucking being an asshole.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He's like, I know for a fact they were stupid, and blind.
I know, one of them didn't have
ugly.
his contacts in.
And one of them was super ugly and and mean to me.
When Frederick Fleet got done with or he was nearing the end where he was like, well, what'd you do after you saw the iceberg? And he recounts ringing the bell and calling the bridge. The guy picking up and going, thank you, and then hanging
Click.
up. Like that was like the headline that day. Thank you. It read really big. Like,
Wow, that's why it
from
was
that.
in the movie too.
Yeah. Well, it's it really happened.
Yeah,
but
right.
it was like everyone.
That broke the whole case
couldn't-
wide the fuck
They just
open.
couldn't believe the cavalierness,
Right.
thank you.
Well, I think it is
Right.
like, and even we struggle with this, like looking at it without the retrospect that we have.
Right.
You know what I
right,
mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like even like right after, they're like, you're judging these people knowing that this ship sank. These
Right.
people don't know the ship's going to
Yeah.
sink.
No,
Yeah.
and they're all in denial at this
Yeah.
point too.
They think it's not going to.
Yeah.
They also subpoenaed Guglielmo Marconi himself, the inventor of the Marconi system, because there was a couple of things that they had to clear up about the range of the Marconograph, and the range of what was possible with it. They had to clear up a few of these things. Also, they had to clear up why the Carpathia ignored the president.
Right. Right.
Honestly, that never really did get put to bed, but I really do think it was because there was a lot going on. We just weren't answering anything from shore until we got there.
Yeah.
I think they were just sort of
Yeah.
afraid to say that, but I think
Yeah.
that's what it was.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I
could see
mean? Like
that.
they're like, forget it, dude. Like, just
They're not
let's
trying
just
to
get
have
there.
another fucking boat sink.
Right. Right. But they ended up thinking those that were saved by Mr. Marconi himself. Like Mr. Marconi was the one that basically saved the ones that were saved.
Right,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? Because without it, the Carpathia wouldn't have been there.
Right.
know?
Right. Yeah.
Now, Robert Hitchens, who was at the wheel and later in the boat with Molly Brown, he was labeled a coward and a bully afterwards, and it kind of ruined his life because of how he treated Molly Brown in the boat and how he dealt with the passengers. He was just kind of an asshole, and it ruined his life.
What if that was the only time he was ever an asshole? What if he just like, sorry, the stress got to me? And you're like, usually he was the nicest guy.
Yeah, he was the nicest
This one
guy.
incident.
Yeah.
They're like, too bad.
In the absolute worst moment of his entire life, he overreacted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or maybe he was an asshole all the time. Fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Piece of shit.
They also found out during this investigation that reversing the engines, although instinctual, it's an instinct to do that, ensured the collision. what you're supposed to do is put one engine or one propeller full ahead, and then the other backwards.
That makes sense.
And then you turn the rudder, hard to starboard, so it turns like this.
Could you capsize your ship doing that?
Than like,
Yeah.
like
It's like
it
when-
sort of stopped and floated and then smashed forward.
It's like if you're driving on ice and you slam on the brakes.
It is. It is, and you kind of slide
like,
forward 1st. Yeah, and that's kind of what
That's
this
what you're
did.
not supposed to do.
Yeah, the British papers were just not kind to William Alden Smith. They said that he's enjoying the limelight, of asking all these stupid questions,
Right.
But it's like, guys, he's just the first one to the investigation. Like, you're going to have your own investigation later.
There's enough
and you're kinda
investigation to
mad.
go around.
Yeah, you're kind of mad that they beat you to it in a lot of ways.
Right.
And what were they supposed to do? Wait? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's just trying to be thorough, and the fact that, like, they were getting, cables coming over that were piecemeal, inaccurate. A lot of it was written shorthand and then sent that way. So a lot of things had to be parsed through. So there's a lot of inaccurate information that
Right.
came to them as well. I think they were more understanding at the end of their own investigation than beforehand. So they talked about basically their findings and then the recommendations for fixing this in the future.
Right.
So the findings were: no general alarm was given, no ship's officers formally assembled, no orderly routine was attempted, or organized system of safety had ever begun. So
That's all
there was
true.
just no alarm. You're like, could you
Right.
imagine like a place burning down and no fire alarm happening?
Yeah.
Right.
You're
You're
just sort of like, okay, get out, but don't tell too many people because we don't want to cause a panic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, have people trained so they know what an
Yeah.
alarm is and what to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The British Board of Trade, of course, to whose laxity of regulation and hasty inspection the world is largely indebted for this awful tragedy.
Yeah.
There's another point. The Californian was much nearer to the Titanic than the captain is willing to admit. That was one of their findings. The ship's safety and life-saving equipment had not been properly tested. That was another finding. The third-class passengers had not been prevented from reaching the lifeboats, but had in many cases not realized until it was too late that the ship was sinking.
Yeah, they weren't even told in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. Many were just like, I don't know what to do, because there's no emergency protocol.
Yeah.
So the recommendations. Ships should slow down on entering areas known to have drifting ice and should post extra lookouts.
Yeah.
Okay? Navigational messages should be brought promptly to the bridge and disseminated as required.
Was that already required? Is that required? Is that?
It was required, but it was like, yeah, bring them to me. Not, you have to do this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There should be enough lifeboats for all on board. And in fact, this was the one point that actually he got a little bit of pushback on. You know why?
Why?
Is because, some people said, and you hear this type of logic all the time these days too. Well, people have been riding on these boats all the time without all the lifeboats, and they just didn't even know it until now. So you're taking your life in your hands the whole time. So I don't know what the problem is.
That fucking way of
Wow.
thinking
I hate
is
that
the
way of
worst
thinking.
fucking thing. Where it's
Yeah.
like, well, that it's happened for this long. Like,
Yeah, it's worked for this long, so why do you keep it the same?
that is literally the greatest problem with humanity. It's
Yeah.
like that way of thinking.
Well, and apply
Yeah.
it to the Titanic. You know, like you already know the story. Everyone knows the story of Titanic by now. So when you see somebody acting like that, it's like, oh yeah, and the Titanic shouldn't have had more lifeboats.
Well, it's like,
you
yeah,
know?
all those things where
Right.
it's like, well, it's worked so far, and then you say that until something
It doesn't work.
doesn't work, like the
Yeah.
Titanic. But it's like, if you weren't fucking saying that, then this probably wouldn't happen.
Right.
And then you'd be like, well, now we're overdoing it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
Right.
and there was a sentiment, and this did actually sort of occur, where they put all the lifeboats on top, and it made it really top heavy, and some boats did tip over. It happened during the war, the First World War, and they found out that you have to you see cruise liners now, they have all these lifeboats on the sides.
yeah. Yeah.
They had to figure out how to put them on the sides and
Yeah.
shit like that, to where it wasn't too top heavy.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You wouldn't just know that.
You
know what I'm
wouldn't,
saying?
No, if you've been going around with not enough lifeboats.
Yeah, exactly.
Just stack them up on the top. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Pile them up there. Fuck it.
Also, all ships equipped with wireless sets should maintain communications at all times of the day and night. That was another one. New regulations were needed to govern the use of radio telegraphy because of these amateur wireless guys kind of fucking the system up. They were like, we can't have that anymore, guys.
Yeah, you're on safety channels. Like,
we can't do this, you know?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
There would also have to be adequate boat drills that were to be carried out for the passengers aboard, of course. You know, just some drills. Make sure people know what to do, you know? Make sure you know what to do, you know? Rockets should only be fired by ships at sea as distress signals and not for any other purpose.
Or use them to blow up icebergs.
Yeah.
Different kind of torpedoes.
I don't think they do
Just
that one
blast
anymore.
through.
Because
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure cruise ships these days literally have fireworks shows.
That's probably true. But there was something at the time that they were like, if you see these, it's an emergency.
Right.
So
well, yeah, everything's different now.
now we
Obviously,
have
there's
better
way
radios.
more ways. Yeah.
With satellite, radios and things like
Right.
this.
That's a good point,
You know?
yeah.
That was basically the findings. It would define William Alden Smith's career. It changed a lot about seafaring after this.
And yeah, a lot of regulations were changed because of this.
Yes, there was a lot of panic legislation that happened.
Yeah, that happens. Yeah.
Like William Alden Smith was not even he wasn't a fan of panic legislation, and that's why he was a champion for having the investigation first.
Yeah.
So you don't just panic and have
sure.
you don't have these
There's
unintended consequences. We see panic legislation all the time.
Well, I absolutely get like I've been talking this whole time of like we need more regulation, but it's like, I mean, how much regulation is like I get how certain people have an issue with regulation.
Totally.
Because it can, if it's not done well,
Yeah. It can
like,
be
it's
kind
a
of
huge,
stupid.
It could be a problem.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's not a automatic solution. It has to be, it's
Has
not
to
that
be done right.
you need regulation or not regulation. You need good regulation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can have absolutely bad regulation or useless.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, useless regulation.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any difference. But there, in the hearts and minds of people, there was a general sort of sea change. In a time without like movie stars and things like this, where people were fascinated by the rich and famous of the Gilded Age. It was kind of the end of that, where they wouldn't any longer look up to like the millionaires of the time. They'd be like, you motherfuckers, kind of in a way, like
I still feel
they
that
treated
way.
them with
Right.
distrust after this, There was a general sense of distrust of anything, of technology even moving forward, because they put so much trust in like their society of the time, the technology of the time,
Right.
that after this it kind of shattered. And there was a lot of distrust, and like that one author said, it ushered in the era of anxiety. It went from this really optimistic time to one that was less sure of itself.
I think that I feel like you see a lot of times like that where like there's some sort of boom in technology, and then almost like the nuclear age saw that too.
Yeah.
Where there was like the future is good, the future is
Right.
better, and then you kind of
Right.
like you saw that here, and then you see that then, and you kind of see it even almost
see it.
now.
Yeah.
With like
Well, social media and the internet, and like, think about like what they said when the internet first came out. This is going to connect the world, and we'll all be so connected, and we can hear ideas from people all over the world.
yeah, you can hear ideas from people.
Yeah.
all over the
That's
world,
the
turns
problem.
out.
A lot of them are Nazis. It turns out.
Yeah.
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 So the recovery efforts that were made to go and find the bodies and stuff, they did send multiple ships out
Right.
to go look for bodies and stuff like that. The ones that could be recovered were preserved and taken to Halifax, Nova Scotia. And some just had to be buried at sea because they were too far gone, right? Some couldn't be identified, some could be. Like John Jacob Astor, his body was identified from his diamond ring.
Oh yeah, there
And
was
the
probably a lot of that. Like their
Yeah.
faces are probably like.
Oh yeah, and he had $4,000 in his pocket, and they're like, "Yeah, that's it, man."
It's funny. I remember him having $5,000. but-
I don't know what happened to it. There was Frederick Hamilton. He was a cable engineer aboard the White Star Line ship, the Mackie Bennett, that went out for these recovery efforts, and he said, "quote For nearly an hour, the words." We therefore commit this body to the deep are repeated, and at each interval comes a splash as the weighted body plunges into the sea to sink to a depth of about 2 miles. End quote.
And they huck him.
Yeah, and he was just like, yeah.
Huck 'em and chuck 'em.
He was just like, it was constantly like, splash, splash, splash. You know what I mean? They spent nearly 2 weeks out there just looking. Hamilton recorded picking up a total number of 305 bodies, 116 of which were buried at sea. This is just what he said, because this ship recovered the most bodies of the victims.
How many bodies total were recovered?
Oh, the numbers really vary.
Okay.
The numbers really vary because a lot of them were buried at sea, so it's hard to say like how many they actually found. Now, the White Star Line itself, this caused them to delay the completion of the Britannic, the sister ship, in the Olympic class, to basically learn lessons from the Titanic, right? The survivors of the tragedy and the families as well, they filed all these claims, which totaled somewhere around $16 million worth of damages. The White Star Line kind of pumped the brakes on paying anything out, on going to court, and anything like this. It didn't really happen until 1916 before they actually paid anything out. And by that time, they settled in court for $664,000, which is not even close to 16 or even 13 million.
Yeah.
And when they finally paid that out in July of 1916, like on the low end, people got $430. And some people got, 980. These are averages.
Right.
Some people got more, some people got less. It was nowhere near what they had hoped.
Yeah.
Some of these people were traveling with everything they had in the world.
Yeah.
Right.
And so if you were third class and you didn't really have a lot, you were basically where you started. You were still poor. If you were uber rich, then it didn't really touch you. You know what I mean? But if you were second class, you were ruined financially. You even had debts now that you couldn't pay off. And they basically just gave you a small amount. And they would even go to like people in the hospitals that were like non-communicative, you know? And they were like, sign this. And so like they signed it sort of without knowing what they were doing. And they're like, here's your money. And like took off, and like they're, no, we settled out of court, and it's like, fuck you guys, man.
Right.
The White Star Line also said that there were like there was like a clause on your ticket that was like, hey, we're not responsible for any of your shit. They're like, and this whole thing was unforeseeable, so we don't have any sort of, we're not
liability.
obligated. Liability. We don't have the liability.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, our hands are tied.
Our hands are tied. We can't pay you.
We wrote it on small print.
Yeah.
We would love to pay you.
Yeah, but we can't.
We legally cannot
We just
because our lawyers made sure that we were not.
Their fleet was pressed into service during the war, the First World War.
We'll send the White Star Line on the first front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just crash into Germany,
Right. Yeah.
northern coast, because that's the only part.
The Britannic was sunk during the war. So was the Lusitania, of course, as
Famously.
we all know. But the Great Depression hit the White Star Line real hard. And so much so that they had to, they merged with their rival, the Cunard Line. So then it became Cunard White Star, or White Star Cunard Line. Anyway, that's where like the Queen Mary is from this merger. There is actually one White Star Line ship that is still, intact today. It's dry docked in Belfast. It's the Nomadic. Yeah, and you can go see it today.
It's ironic that the Nomadic isn't going anywhere.
No. Now, J. Bruce Ismay, the sort of scapegoat, they called him the coward of the Titanic. He wasn't. But, his ancestor, Clifford Ismay, actually wrote a book about him trying to clear up his name. He's alive today. He's a part of the historical, thing about this. He really does a good job of sort of clearing up all of that. So he's like, I understand why people would think that he was the coward of the Titanic, but he wasn't. He was scapegoated. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that, there's when there was such a diffusion of responsibility, everybody's trying to find, like,
Right.
if that diffusion could somehow be targeted at you,
Yeah.
you try to find somebody to to get that away from you.
Well,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and people do want to blame somebody or something. You know,
especially
they
like,
want to blame one thing.
like
you know,
like your average person, it's easier to blame an individual rather than. Yeah, that's why they call it a diffusion of responsibilities. It's like nobody is really that guilty.
Right.
When everybody's guilty, you know?
Yeah. He sunk into a deep depression that he would never recover from for pretty much the rest of his life. He was still active in the maritime business and merchant marines during the war. He kept a low profile, though. He wasn't a public person anymore. His wife, Florence, basically ensured that the subject of the Titanic was never on the table, and you didn't talk about that in their house.
She was like, we will stay married, but I won't respect you, and I'll make sure the children don't respect you.
I think you should leave.
Yeah, it is from I Think You Should Leave.
Yeah.
I just quote I Think You Should Leave, and if people haven't seen it, they're like, Chris is so funny.
Yeah.
Just steal from Tim Robinson.
So he enjoyed solitary pleasures, like fishing. He just fished by himself a lot. But all of his friends were like, the Titanic was never far from his thoughts. He would engage in like useless speculation of like how it could have been fixed like what they could have done better.
That doesn't sound healthy.
No.
I would suggest you go to therapy.
Yeah. He eventually lost a leg to diabetes. And there was one time at Christmas time in 1936, less than a year before his death, that one of his grandsons and his daughter were there, and they learned that Ismay was involved in maritime shipping, and inquired if he had ever been involved in a shipwreck. And like everyone's like, fuck, like they all like, shit, they mentioned it, you know. And Ismay, for the first time ever, broke his silence on it. And it was like a quarter century silence. And he replied, quote, to these children, "Yes, I was once on a ship that was believed to be unsinkable," end quote. I just think that's fucking
haunting.
I know, right? Like, just sit like at Christmas time in front of the Christmas tree, the children are playing, like in his chair, just like, yes, it's like, wow, like, ugh.
Yeah, I just imagine him kind of just that 100-yard stare all the time.
Yes, yes, it was, yeah.
So, big time. It was hilarious.
On October 17th, 1937, J. Bruce Ismay died at the age of 74, 3 days after he had a stroke. He is buried in the Putney Vale Cemetery in London. That's where he is.
London.
Margaret Brown, Molly Brown, she's amazing.
Bad Molly Brown.
She organized a committee with some of the other first-class passengers, like on the Carpathia, to raise money for the second and third-class passengers for medical treatment and counseling, to basically happen as soon as they got back. So she was a big proponent of this.
I love her, and I still picture Kathy Bates.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, me too.
I don't even picture Kathy Bates in that movie. I picture just Kathy Bates, the actress Kathy Bates, who I love, American treasure.
She's great.
Yeah, she received an award for this, for her, philanthropy. In 1914, 6 years before female suffrage, she became one of the first women in United States history to run for public office.
Cool.
Colorado's senatorial seat.
And she won.
She ended her political campaign, actually. She ended it early. You know why? To go to France.
Funsies?
And help with the war effort.
Oh, that war effort.
Like, to go to Paris is calling.
Yeah, no, she
Paris.
No, she served with the Red Cross. And then as the director of the American Committee for Devastated France during the First World War, where she organized nurses, ambulances, and like field hospitals and things like this.
Wow.
For the war effort. Yeah.
Dude, she's awesome.
Yeah. She actually got the French Legion of Honor for doing that as well.
It almost makes you forget that time she like kidnapped that author and like broke his legs. Still confusing her with Kathy Bates. In my mind, it's just Kathy Bates, but all her roles.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
She doesn't want Adam Sandler playing football.
There's a lot of roles. I just watched Failure to Launch, and she plays the mom in that.
Yeah.
She's Matthew McConaughey's mom, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
This
She also
is
has an old son
crazy.
living.
Yeah,
living with
he's
her.
like 35. Yeah, living
And
with
he's
her.
not supposed to play football either.
No,
Failure to launch your football career.
right.
I've never seen that. I don't even know what that's about.
It's not very good.
Yeah.
It's a rom-com.
Well, that very same year, she contributed to the miners and their families during the 1914 Ludlow Massacre, which is an episode we're going to do fairly here soon. It was a coal mine disaster, and she gave like money to the people that were involved in that. She also, that same year, guys, organized the International Women's Rights Conference to get everyone together, talk about female suffrage. Just amazing. She was widowed in 1922. J.J. Brown, her husband, died. She said, like, I've met foreign dignitaries and all these people, but there'll never be another man that's better than J.J. You know, they loved
adorable.
each other. Yeah. But the problem with that is that her kids didn't really like the fact that she spent all this money on like charitable stuff.
Right.
So his inheritance, she had to fight her own children in court
Oh.
for like her money, which is
She raised
nasty.
some shitty children, so she's not perfect.
Yes, I guess.
I'm blaming her.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to blame the whole Titanic on her. Fuck it.
And later in life, she actually studied acting,
Oh.
which
So
is
she
crazy.
is
And then
Kathy
she
Bates.
played herself in the movie Titanic.
Yeah.
Well, there's another story coming up here soon.
Oh.
That
Is
you're gonna
do we got
love.
any skeletons in her closet? That's what I want to hear.
The unsinkable Molly Brown, as she would become known
Right.
to history. She died in her sleep at 10:55 p.m.
Okay.
on October 26th, 1932, at the age of 65, in New York City. She's buried next to JJ at the cemetery of the Holy Rood, in Westbury, New York. So that's where she is.
She died in her sleep at 65. Mm-hmm. What the fuck?
Yeah, different times, I guess. I don't know.
That still happens.
It still happens for sure.
Yes.
I'm not going to live that long. With my heart condition? I mean, I don't know, but I assume.
Yeah. Yeah, I know I got a bum ticker.
It can't be going well there.
Now, there was also a lady called Miss Unsinkable that was also a survivor.
My mother was Mrs. Unsinkable.
She was an Argentine stewardess that survived. Her name was Violet Constance Jessup. She was also aboard the Olympic during the Hawk incident, remember, where EJ kind of hit that British cruiser?
Yeah.
You know, so she was aboard the Olympic
Both.
at that time, and the Titanic when it went down, so she survived
I'm not
that.
riding a boat with her ever again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bad luck charm.
Someone just handed her a baby when she stepped into boat 16. And so she's holding a baby like this whole time, like on boat 16. And when she got on the Carpathia, she's still standing there with it. And this woman runs up to her, grabs the baby, and then runs away crying. And she was like, I guess that was her mother, the baby's
Probably.
mother.
I hope that was the baby's mother.
Yeah, exactly.
Just take a baby.
Yeah.
Right.
Now's my chance. They're going to assume.
Yeah.
And I've always wanted... It's like Raising Arizona.
Yeah.
You know, the woman in that?
Oh, yeah.
She wanted a baby. real bad.
Holly Hunter.
Yeah, it is Holly
Yeah.
Hunter.
Don't you cuss in front of that baby. Yeah.
It's a great movie.
She also served in the Red Cross during the war aboard the White Star Line's ships. So she served on the Britannic when it exploded and sank.
Okay, yeah. This lady,
She was on 3 boats that sank.
God
Did she
was really
survive
trying to
that
kill
one?
her ass.
Yeah. Well, the Olympic didn't necessarily sink. It was repaired, then brought back.
It did explode.
Well, there was an explosion, and Ned didn't know exactly. That's a story for a different day.
Did
And
she
on-
survive that?
She survived.
Yeah.
And
She
on the
survived.
Britannica, she was like, oh,
She was-
here we go again.
Yeah.
She was thrown clear.
Yeah.
Thrown
to
from the
safety.
wreckage.
Yeah.
I like to be thrown from the wreckage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoa. Landed in a pillow factory.
Yeah. Blown to safety.
Yeah. Everyone else was horribly maimed and disfigured.
Yeah.
If they survived at all.
A lot of people survived that one, actually. I think there was like 30-some people that died on that one. But it was at war. As a wartime, laws
Yeah.
had changed by that point.
It was legal to blow each other up.
It was. She retired in 1950, and after her retirement, she claimed this is a super interesting story. She claimed that she received a telephone call on a stormy night, right? And there was a woman who asked her if she saved a baby the night the Titanic sunk. Mm-hmm. She said yes. And the voice on the other end said, "I was that baby." Then they laughed, and then they hung up.
Solid prank.
Well, and her family was like, it was a prank of some kids having fun. And she's like, no, I've never told anyone that story before. I just told you that just now.
Weird.
Yeah.
And that baby was
No.
Albert Einstein.
Yeah. Yeah, Richard Nixon.
Richard Nixon.
Yeah.
Does that timeline work out? That might.
No,
What is
Richard Nixon was born
No,
later.
you're right.
But she died in 1971 at the age of 83. Age of 83. Miss Unsinkable.
Richard Nixon was born in 1913.
Ah.
So that's a lie.
It's a lie.
And he was born a little bit
little
earlier.
earlier. Yeah.
Right.
It was Richard Nixon.
It was.
You can't
Yeah.
convince me
Yeah.
otherwise. That baby was Richard
Then they
Nixon.
just guessed his date of birth because, yeah.
Okay.
They lied to him. And
Yeah.
that was a prank.
Yeah, yeah, right. Well, she had never said anything. She never told anyone. Like, or even her own kids. Like, a lot of these survivors, they did not talk about this afterwards. Like, a
Right.
lot of them didn't. Some of them did write books about it right afterwards, and you'll see that. But, like, yeah, a lot of them just didn't say
Well, you
anything
got to get
about
that payday.
How the hell
Yeah.
did the baby, grown-up baby, obviously, find her?
The mother
Well,
might
the
have known.
mother.
Yeah.
And, like, there was this question of whether or not, like...
the mother would have had
like,
to known who that
Vi-
was, right?
Right, and like Violet Jessup was like, there was this question. I don't know how true it is, but there's this question that like she was like, the mother just handed the baby over and was gonna leave it there, and like got on a boat and like was just gonna leave the baby, and like there was this I don't know, it's kind of muddled. And she's like, then, you know, she wanted it back and stuff, like, oh, she's an unfit mother, something. I don't know how true any of that is, to be honest with you. There was
Yeah.
that rumor. I don't know
very
if it's a
confusing.
rumor. Yeah, but there that went around, right? So, I don't know.
Right.
Now, one really interesting sort of story from this was the Titanic orphans. These two children, ages 4 and 2. They were French. They did not speak a word of English, of course. They responded to every question with "oui, oui." It was Michel and Edmond. Michel being 4, Edmond 2. Their father was Michel Navatril Sr. He was going through a messy divorce in France, and he took the kids, and he was going to go to America and start over. He kidnapped his own kids. He got on board under an assumed name. So that made him harder to track, you know?
Yeah.
And he, like, handed the kids over and he died on the Titanic. But nobody knew, you know, who these kids belonged to.
How many of those kids
know?
grew up to be Richard Nixon? That's an insane thing to say.
Yeah.
All of them.
How many of them?
They stayed temporarily in the home of Margaret Hayes, who is another survivor, in the Upper West Side of Manhattan, while the authorities, you know, attempted to track down any relatives that they could find. And of course, you know, it's getting published that, oh, the orphans of the Titanic, you know? And like the story made its way to France, right? And so their mother finally found out that her children were there, and she came over to New York and got them and brought them home. It's kind of crazy because there's a picture of them, and they were given toys. And I don't know who had the bright idea, but they gave him a little ship toy to play with. So like if you see like the little kid is holding a toy ship that kind of looks like the Titanic, and it's like, this is kind of fucked up.
Jesus.
It was
You
an
know?
exact replica.
Yeah, right.
Some dumbass adult.
Yeah.
You know, in Star Wars: Return of the Jedi, right? The Super Star Destroyer crashes into the Death Star at one point. Now, I'm wondering, were there any survivors, any children survivors, even though it was a war?
Yeah.
And then somebody gave them a little model of the Super Star Destroyer, like the
Yeah.
micro machines.
Yeah.
Because I had one of those when I was a kid, and that's where my head
Yeah.
went. And I was like, oh, like the Super Star Destroyer.
Yes, like that. Yeah. Only it's little. You'll see the
It was
picture.
an insane fucking tangent there that I just went on, but
And then they were like, point on the ship where
Where did
Touched you.
Where did the ship touch you?
Yeah, where did the iceberg touch you?
Oh, it's an iceberg. That would be even more fucked up.
Here's an iceberg and a boat.
Here's an iceberg toy.
Yeah. Now, Madeline Astor, the new Mrs. Astor, right?
Miss Disaster.
Who was
Nice.
pregnant, of course. She kind of remained in isolation in her Fifth Avenue mansion.
Oh.
One of these storied Fifth Avenue
That
mansions.
sucks.
Bummer.
Yeah, she only kind of came out a little bit when she held a lunch for the surgeon and captain of the Carpathia with Marion Thayer. You know, they were rich and they wanted to say thank you, and that's their way of doing it when you're rich. But she gave birth to John Jacob Astor VI
Oh.
on August 14th, 1912, just a few months after, you know? She was kind of reclusive because she knew that if she remarried, that she would lose all of the estate, the
Right.
Astor estate. She just wouldn't have that anymore. And so all she could really do was she renovated that mansion, you know, and she just kind of stayed in there herself until she did eventually remarry a banker, William Carl Dick. And she, of course, lost her Astor money,
But
right?
she got that dick money. You know what I'm saying?
She had two sons with him, William Force Dick and
What?
John Henry Dick. Yeah. Now, John...
Forced dick.
Yeah.
The grandfather of Andy Dick.
Yeah, right. John Henry Dick, he was actually a naturalist and painter. Like, he painted pictures of birds and things. He was actually, during the end of World War II, you know where he was? On Iwo Jima.
Ah, with my peepaw.
Yeah.
Grand peepaw.
Yeah. She eventually divorced him, though, and she remarried an Italian boxer, but they divorced 5 years later. She lived in Florida at that time, Palm Beach. But Madeline Dick died of heart failure at her mansion in Palm Beach on March 27th, 1940, at the age of 46. Very young.
It's probably from all that shit they were eating all the time, like what they had on that Titanic, ox testicles or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Ox liver. I don't know.
Kidneys and bacon
Yeah.
or whatever it was.
Oh,
Yeah.
Kidneys, bacon fried in testicle grease.
Yeah. For first class only.
She's buried in the same mausoleum as her mother in the Trinity Church Cemetery in New York City. So that's where she resides to this day. Now, 17-year-old Jack Thayer was one of the 40 people who jumped or fell into the water and survived the ordeal. He went on to graduate from the University of Pennsylvania. During the First World War, he served as an artillery officer in the United States Army. Which is kind of cool. You know, he's a rich guy. He doesn't necessarily need to do that, but he did. He had 2 sons and 3 daughters. One son was killed in a bomber over the Pacific during World War II, which sent him into a very deep depression.
Yeah, it's rough.
That he would never really recover from. But his mother, Marion Thayer, she died on April 14th, 1944, 32 years to the day of the sinking of the Titanic, you know?
April 14th, yeah.
Yeah, and it only worsened his depression. So on September 20th, 1945, Jack Thayer was found in his car on 48th Street and Parkside Avenue in West Philadelphia with his throat and wrist cut in a
Damn.
suicide, which is fucking tragic that you survived the Titanic, you go to World War I, and then you still feel the
Yeah.
need to, I don't know, you know, take the permanent way out, I guess.
Right.
He's in the Church of the Redeemer Cemetery in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. Not the only Titanic survivor to be buried in that cemetery, by the way, which is weird. Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, I guess.
I've never even heard of it.
Yeah, me
Yeah,
either.
there's
Sorry,
several
folks
places.
at Bryn Mawr.
I know, right?
To you, that could be your whole world.
Remember Joseph LaRoche? He was the nephew to the Haitian president.
Ah, yes.
Him and his 2 children were the only black passengers on board.
Right.
And his pregnant wife Juliet, they were there. His body was never recovered. He woke up his family, took him up to the lifeboats, put him in, and he was never recovered. And you know, when she went to New York, she's like, "Well, we were gonna go to Haiti, but now I don't have any family there." So she went back to France, and she was pregnant at the time of the sinking. So when she gave birth to her son, she named him Joseph in honor of her father.
You're right.
Or
His
children's father.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something I also found out that was interesting is there was a group of first-class passengers, the Colliers, and they were supposed to go to a little town next to where I grew up, a little tiny place called Payette, Idaho.
Do you know it?
I've been there, yeah, multiple times. Emmett is actually near the Payette River. And they were going to go and buy a fruit orchard there. At that time, a lot of fruit orchards in that area.
Right.
And they never made it, because they died. I just thought that was so interesting. Payette, Idaho is so close to where, I grew up.
Right.
The silent film actress, Dorothy Gibson. She was traveling with her mother, of course, Mother Pauline. When she got off the Carpathia, she was met by her manager and sort of lover, the
Colonel.
Jules Brulatour. He immediately was like, "We're gonna make a picture, see?
Yeah.
About the sinking of the Titanic, and you're gonna be in it,
That's not fucking
You're gonna be
traumatizing.
in it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so they were the first ones to make a movie about the sinking of the Titanic. Yeah, crazy shit. It was called Saved from the Titanic, and she was in it. She played herself. She even wore the same clothes.
Weird.
In the movie.
What the fuck?
And dude, they produced this like right afterwards. Literally right afterwards. She retired from acting in May of that year. She was like, "I'm not acting in anything ever again."
So that was goddamn traumatizing.
Yeah. It was a big hit though, of the time. Huge hit.
So was the other Titanic movie.
Yeah. It was, all of them. All the subsequent Titanic movies, except for like Titanic 2 or Titanic 666, which I watched.
Nice.
Oh, is the devil involved?
There was like Titanic Ghosts. It's pretty much the worst thing I've ever seen. I know that like people work hard on these movies, and I get it, and I want to cut you some slack, but whew, that was bad. Sorry, guys.
Well, yeah. It's not the crew's fault. It sucks.
I know. But this film was tragically lost, as a lot of these silent era films were, and it's considered by a lot of film historians to be one of the biggest losses to film history is to lose this.
They probably
movie.
didn't. I mean, they probably didn't have a great way of archiving this stuff back then because it was kind of a new thing.
No,
that makes sense.
Yeah, and it burns really easily.
Yeah.
and they melted it down for the war effort too. And
that makes sense. I mean, they probably
to make guitar picks and shoe heels and things like that. Anything plastic. They wanted to melt it down.
So all the guitar picks they had to fire at the enemies.
Yeah. Yeah, that was Vietnam. No,
I ain't no fortunate son.
Yeah, right. And at the time of her retirement, she was the highest paid actress. There was even higher than Mary Pickford at the time.
At the time?
At the time, yeah.
Higher than Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah.
At the time.
Right. In 1912.
Having not been alive yet.
Now,
Yeah.
a year later, in 1913, she was driving Brulatour's sports car in New York and hit and killed a pedestrian. And
Regular Matthew Broderick.
I was
Yeah.
literally going to say that.
now everyone found out, oh shit, you were driving this married man's car. You're his mistress, huh? And like they had to be like, it was a big scandal. They had to be like, well, we're separated, da 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 da. But she basically like there's all the shame that came down on her.
I like that. The fact that she was driving a married man's car seems to be a bigger issue than the fact that she
Literally
committed
murdered.
vehicular homicide.
Yeah, manslaughter.
Manslaughter.
Yeah.
It was like, that person was poor. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
But you have been cheating.
Yeah, right.
Or not cheating. Yeah, because
having an
blame the
affair.
woman. For
Blame the
being
woman, yeah.
Yeah. Right.
So she had to leave New York for Paris, again with her mother, to just escape all the gossip and everything like this, So
And if there's one thing Paris loves, it's mistresses and vehicular manslaughter.
I think it's funny how many of these people that like leave and go back to Europe, and it's like
you got
you
back
had
on
to
a boat.
get you had to do basically the
can't
same
wait to get on a
fucking
boat
journey.
again.
Well, so many of these people are like, yeah, no, Like one lady goes, "I never traveled on an aeroplane. That's too dangerous."
Oh my God.
Like, no, I only traveled by boat. And it's like,
way
even
safer.
after this?
Yeah. Even after. Oh my God.
Yeah, like that. Not that crazy, you know.
Wow.
And it was in Paris where her and her mother became Nazi sympathizers.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And her mother was like a proud fascist, I guess. It was alleged that she was that Dorothy was a operative, sort of like a Mata Hari style situation. It's loose though. Probably not. Probably not.
Also, Mata Hari being also was loose.
Yeah. Also sort of not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember what was that movie? The Kingsman one. Kingsman.
The King's Man. Yeah. So she kind of soured on Nazism and fascism and moved to Italy.
Oh, that's the place to go.
Yeah, right. But she renounced all allegiance to the Nazis and fascists when she went, and they found out, and they're like, "You're being anti-fascist."
Yeah, like that was
Right?
that was. You know what I hate is fascists.
Yeah.
I'm gonna move to Italy and fucking
in the 1930s.
yeah, the 1930s.
Yeah, and so she was arrested for being anti-fascist. She was thrown in a prison in Milan, the prison of San Vittore.
Ooh, sounds nice.
Yeah, right. And she escaped with
Cool.
two other prisoners.
Nice.
A journalist. He was like a left-wing
Did they
journalist.
tunnel out?
Huh?
Did they tunnel out?
No, they tricked a couple of
That's
people.
always
to
my
get out.
favorite way to go.
I know. Yeah, it's the Great Escape.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. No, like a left-wing journalist and a subversive Italian general. Basically, is in very broad terms, basically what happened. There was a cardinal, Ildefonso Schuster, the Archbishop of Milan. He was the one that kind of helped them out, you know. And there was like a young chaplain of the Milanese resistance group that kind of helped set up their escape and you know, got like this underground railroad, I guess, of people to get.
This feels like a
out of the
movie.
country. I know, just that, like this escape
Yeah.
from this like
Yeah,
fascist
just make
prison.
that a
Right.
movie.
I know, right? Like this is fucking insane. You know,
Yeah.
fucking insane. She went back to Paris, to the Ritz,
Nice.
and she died at the age of 56 in 1946, in her room there. Not old.
Not
you
a
know?
lot of these people didn't live to that old.
Yeah.
Ismay did. He was in his 70s.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
her mother Pauline actually she lived until 1961 and also died at the Ritz.
It's a place to die.
I guess. Now remember Noelle Leslie, the Countess of Rothus? Remember the Countess that was on the Titanic? Also an amazing person. When she got on her lifeboat number 8, she like instantly. It was one of the first lifeboats to go to be lowered, but she instantly like helped take command of it, and like she had like this like optimistic spirit and was like rallying everyone. She sat at the tiller.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
And like, you know, she survived with Gladys Cherry and her maid, and yeah, like she was calm, she was decisive, like her leadership. Everyone talked about like it was thanks to her leadership really that we had like a resolute attitude to survive. You
That's
know what
great.
I mean? And on the Carpathia, she devoted herself to the care of the steerage women and children that had been saved as well. But once she got back, she didn't welcome any sort of publicity that proclaimed her as a heroine. She insisted that the cool-headed leadership of the seaman, the able seaman, Mr. Jones, he was more to thank for this. Like she was like, "No, I'm no hero." So there's other people that are the hero. You know what I mean? That's what she kind of did. And so as a token of her esteem, she actually presented that Mr. Jones with an inscribed silver pocket watch, and she also gave one to the steward Alfred Crawford in recognition for his assistance at the oars. She said they were rowing doggedly for 5 hours, and that just deserved her recognition and things like that. Jones, he returned this gift by giving her the brass number 8 from the lifeboat.
Oh, wow.
He gave her that. And they actually, they wrote each other every Christmas until they died.
Interesting.
Pretty interesting.
Just on Christmas?
Yeah, just on Christmas. I mean, this is the Countess we're talking about. She knows
Just
a lot
Christmas?
of people.
Fuck.
Yeah. She was a proponent for women's suffrage, but she was also a conservative, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she's royalty, right? So you can't really be both. You know what I mean? Because, yeah. She also got into the Red Cross and helped nurse soldiers during the First World War at her own home, a wing of which that she converted into a hospital for troops in the conflict. And then she moved to the Coulter Hospital in London to help there as well. She really found a lot of fulfillment from this, and she did a lot during the war.
Yeah.
She her own husband actually, who was wounded, like shot in the eye, I think.
Ooh.
Like he was missing an eye, like helped nurse him back to health during the war.
He probably got a sweet patch though.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Yeah. Norman Rothus, he died though on March 29th, 1927, and Noelle, she retained her title even still, and later married a colonel later that same year. Which is sort of crazy.
Got over it fast.
Yeah, right? People really liked her and looked up to her in the community. She wanted to know the people. She wanted to know the people in the community, you know, and they all got to know her. They revered her very much. She eventually she died in Sussex on the 12th of September, 1956, at the age of 77 from heart disease. She's buried next to her first husband in the Leslie Vault at Christkirk on the Green Churchyard in Leslie in Fife.
Ah.
So there you go.
Fife.
Yeah, not Washington.
Not our Fife.
No, no.
I know. We do have a Fife.
Yeah. Remember the tennis player, Richard Norris Williams? Remember him?
I remember a tennis player. Yes, so yeah.
There were two. There were two.
Okay.
Richard Norris Williams, he was on there with his father. While the ship was going down, he heard somebody in the cabin that had locked themselves in, basically, screaming. And he busted the door down. And you're going to love this, Maddie. A steward was like, hey, you're going to pay for that. And he was like, fuck you. So that's where that sort of scene in the Titanic, like when they break down that door.
Yes,
like, hey, that's
yes,
White
yes.
Star property.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
that, yeah.
But his father, he was on the same part when the funnel fell. And it killed his father, but it swept him towards that overturned...
His father got straight smooshed.
Or, no, it wasn't the overturned one he was swept to. He was swept to the one that had standing water in it.
Oh.
Where, like, multiple people died while they were waiting. He had frostbitten feet, so much so that when he was on the Carpathia, like, the surgeon's like, you're gonna have to lose the legs, man. And he's like, I'm a fucking tennis player. No way I'm losing the legs.
I need these.
Yeah, so he insisted that he didn't get his legs amputated, and he recovered. Made a full recovery. In fact, went back to playing tennis.
Good thing they didn't amputate those legs.
I know. And
They're
not
like,
only...
I'm about to amputate your mouth if you don't shut up.
Not only did he return to tennis, he also was the Olympic gold medalist afterwards. He was even considered unbeatable by some after this.
Yeah, and after that, all tennis players were freezing their feet.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
With less success.
yeah, less success.
Turned out it was kind of an isolated incident.
Yeah.
One-time thing.
He is in the International Tennis Hall of Fame now.
Oh, there's an International Tennis Hall of Fame.
Yeah, absolutely.
Learn something new every day.
He also won, I don't really know exactly what this is, but he won the Davis Cup playing doubles with a fellow Titanic survivor, Carl Bear. So those two, like, they went on to, like, win
They probably
this
let him
prestigious
win.
cup. Yeah, right.
They felt bad for him.
It's like
Jesus, give him the
it's like
one
Ukraine
thing.
at Eurovision.
Well, Sweden just won.
Did they?
Like today,
I was talking
think.
about the last one.
Yeah.
You know which one I'm talking
I
about.
do know the one you're talking about, but Sweden just won. That was like today or something.
Yeah.
Anyway. And you know what? He actually also served in World War I, also receiving the Legion of Honor and the French War Cross for courage and valor. Like, these people, like, my God, they went through so much in such a small amount of time. He also became a successful investment banker and was involved heavily in the Pennsylvania Historical Society.
Cool.
Just an amazing life, really, this guy. Richard Norris Williams died of emphysema on June 2nd, 1968.
Smoker?
I mean, tennis star and smoker, I guess.
They probably all smoked.
Yeah. At the age of 77, also buried in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. So there you go.
That's the second one you were talking about.
Yes.
We got to do the history of Bryn Mawr.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
It's just one big cemetery.
Yeah.
The whole fucking town.
Living population 1. It's
Yeah.
the gravekeeper.
Yeah. He's a happy man.
He's happy, but he's spooky.
I'm gonna spit out my drink.
He's harmless.
He's
but,
whistling. Yeah.
But
There's something about him.
he's tall, bony.
yeah,
He looks like the Hat Man.
it's the Hat Man.
It's the Hat Man.
It's like a Now and Then.
Okay.
If you've seen that.
The one with like Rosie O'Donnell.
Is that a
Yes,
thing?
because
Yeah.
the guy who keeps the cemetery, they're all creeped out by, and then they find out that he just like goes there, or maybe he's not. He doesn't keep it, but he's there every night, and they find out everyone's so scared of him. He's this spooky, crazy guy, and then they find out that he just goes to visit his son, who
Oh,
died
that's
really
very
young,
sad.
or visit his
Under
grave.
mysterious circumstances.
Right?
He killed his son. He is creepy.
Yeah.
It's a twist on a twist.
Yeah.
You know what I was thinking about the other day? The Hat Man, I think, looks a lot like the old man in Poltergeist 2.
Oh, yeah. I always thought that character was based on the Hat Man. Or
Right?
that idea.
But I think it might.
be.
I think there might be a little bit of chicken the egg thing going on.
You know what I
there.
think? I think it's the guy on the oatmeal can. The
The Quaker
guy.
Oatmeal guy.
Scariest man that ever lived.
Yeah, he's like, I'm a pacifist.
Yeah.
And they're like, oof.
Oh, fuck.
Now, remember the Duff Gordons? Cosmo?
Oh, big time.
Cosmo Duff Gordon? and
Cosmo and Wanda.
Yeah,
Lady
Cosmo
Duff
Wanda.
Gordon?
Yeah.
Now, they didn't look so well either after that, like, little payoff, remember? It wasn't really a payoff, but it looked like one, definitely.
Oh, right.
It was 100 I saw that guy's top hat in that picture.
Yeah.
That's a payoff.
They actually were the only passengers that were called to testify during the British inquiry. Mm-hmm. And they were actually, they were absolved of any wrongdoing, despite the public suspicion of the Duff Gordons, that they had acted selfishly, and they were tainted by it for the rest of their lives. Cosmo, they were estranged after that. They didn't get a divorce, but they stayed apart, and they remained friends, but sort of stayed apart.
Have there been a lot of people named Cosmo? Like,
I don't know.
I know Kramer. I know Cosmo and Wanda.
Yeah.
And then this guy.
Parents.
Yeah.
And then dogs.
Yeah, Cosmo.
Right.
The dog in Guardians of the Galaxy is named
Yeah,
Cosmo,
yeah,
which
yeah.
I have not seen yet, but I'm sure I will.
I haven't either, but there's a card of that in Marvel Snap
Ooh,
of
you
the
play
dog.
that?
I played it when it first came out for a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tyler plays that.
Yeah, it was fun for a while.
He wanted me to get into it, but I don't like card games.
If you don't like card games, you will
not for
absolutely
me.
not like it.
It's designed for me to not like it.
It's literally a card game.
Yeah.
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 I played all through Witcher 3. I've never played Gwent.
Oh yeah, I
Never
haven't
once.
either. Not once.
Never even tried it. You don't
Yeah.
have to.
You don't have to. So I didn't.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna learn another card game for this.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they did have affection towards each other, but there was too much between them, I think, and that's why they had to separate. Lady Duff Gordon was almost on the Lusitania when it sunk,
Whoa.
but she had an illness and canceled her plans. Had
Like-
a narrow miss there.
Like
you
Seth
know.
MacFarlane.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Right.
But legal troubles followed her. There was a lot of legal troubles that she was dealing with. There was at one point she had to admit that all the dresses that she had and everything that she had on her fashion line weren't all designed by her. And so people were like, "You're a phony! You're a phony!" And it kind of ruined her life,
Well, they already didn't like her, so.
Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
all the dresses that she designed were actually stolen from other passengers on the Titanic.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And she was going to the Lusitania to do the same.
Yeah. Right.
Dodged that bullet when the fucking Germans sunk it.
I know, right? Now, Cosmo, he died on April 20th, 1931, at the age of 68.
Yeah.
And Lady Duff Gordon died of breast cancer, complicated by pneumonia, in Putney, London, at a nursing home in 1935. She was 71 years old when that happened. So, yeah, things just didn't really go well for them afterwards.
Fuck 'em.
Yeah,
That's what I say.
that's fair.
Fuck them.
Archibald Gracie, the Colonel, I believe. Yeah, Colonel Archibald Gracie.
Ah, the Colonel.
This guy was the guy that he was friends with the Strausses, and he was writing revisionist history about the lost cause idea of the Civil War.
Yeah.
He survived on the overturned lifeboat. You know, that's where he survived. He was very sick when they pulled in to New York on the Carpathia, but he wasted no time in writing a book about it because that was kind of his thing. You know, it was called "The Truth About the Titanic," and it's actually still in print today. Colonel Gracie, he had diabetes, and he would never really recover from his hypothermia that he experienced while surviving. So on December 4th of 1912, he died before his book was actually published in print. But his last words were, quote, "We must get them to the boats. We must get all of them into the boats," end quote.
Mm-hmm.
That's what his last words were.
His last words were that.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah.
was he? Was he like
At least he didn't die,
hallucinating
like-
or something?
I think so, yeah. I think he was just like that.
Yeah.
He was only thinking about that.
Yeah.
That's dark.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
fucking
only
dark
months
as shit.
after,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Like, yeah, he was just fucking haunted by it until his dying moment. He is buried in the Gracie family plot at Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx,
Cool.
New York City, the same place Bat Masterson is buried. There's a lot of
And
there's a lot of
Batman.
people at that cemetery that
Yeah.
that place has a who's who of people.
Yeah, you said the name of that cemetery. I was like, I've definitely heard of that cemetery.
Yeah,
but where? I don't know.
Yeah. Now Charles Lightoller, you know, the most senior officer to survive the Titanic.
The one who didn't see shit.
Right. He was able to help channel the public outcry over the incident into a positive change. As many of his recommendations for avoiding such accidents in the future were adopted by maritime nations.
Yeah, that's good.
So that is a good thing.
Here-
Yeah.
He's like, I didn't hear about no Titanic, but here's what I think they should have done.
Yeah. he had the idea, the great idea of basing lifeboat capacity on the number of passengers and crew instead of ship tonnage.
Wow.
Now that is a
Who
good
would've
idea.
thought?
Yeah.
He's an idea man, and I say,
Yeah.
put him in charge.
He also was like, how about we conduct lifeboat drills so passengers know where the lifeboats are and crew know how to operate them?
It's a great idea. Solid, 10 for 10.
Solid
10
idea.
out of 10 idea.
Yeah. He also was a proponent for instituting a manned 24-hour wireless radio communications on all passenger
fuck
ships.
that, though.
Nice.
What if you're sleepy, though?
Yeah, right? He also required mandatory transmissions of ice warnings to all ships as well. And by the way, this began like an international like ice warning system watch. It sort of turned into the United States Coast Guard.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. It's sort of
Okay.
it comes from a couple of different places, but it kind of begins here on this like all these boats looking for ice and being like a constant warning for any boats that still
Interesting.
exists to this day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of these ideas saved lives.
Oh yes.
That's
Future
a good thing.
in the future.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is what I'm talking about. Forethought.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
It's hard. I get it.
Yeah.
Forethought because of something that happened.
Right.
Yeah.
But,
But it not only extended to the United States, but also any country that
Right.
had a maritime service. So all of them, pretty much. Any of them that aren't landlocked, pretty much.
Right.
So there you go. That's incredibly positive. Charles Lightoller returned to duty with the White Star Line. He served as a mate on the RMS Oceanic. Then it was turned into the HMS Oceanic because it was pressed into service for the war. Where he was like an officer the whole time during the war. In 1915, he served as the first officer during the trials of another passenger liner, the RMS Campania, which was converted into like an early aircraft carrier,
Okay.
right? This was sort of an idea that was thrown at the American inquiry, where like a guy was like, well, what about airplanes? You could rescue people with airplanes. And it's like sort of like an idea for a very primitive aircraft carrier. It's an interesting idea, you know, like interesting that they're thinking this up before like we really had any idea on how to pull that off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Interesting.
some of the kernels for these ideas came out of this. is
Yeah,
kinda what you're
yeah.
saying. Yeah.
Now, during the war, there was a lot of controversy that happened. Like, he was in command of a torpedo boat he got the Distinguished Service Cross for engaging a Zeppelin. Like, they, like, manned the guns and, like, he, like, personally, like, shot at a Zeppelin.
Cool.
With these guns and shit, which is fucking awesome. But it was in the night, too. But it was this other one where he was the commander of the Falcon. And there was a collision in the fog with a trawler, the John Fitzgerald, where, like, the boats went down and, he also survived another sinking.
Right.
You know what I mean? He was also, and they moved him down to a River-class destroyer, which they basically blew up a German boat, and, like, there were survivors in the water that were unarmed, and he opened fire on all of them.
Damn.
And he was like, people were like, you can't just do that. And he was like, fuck those guys. Like, I fucking hate the Germans. They're a blight on this fucking ocean. And it's like, Jesus.
Brutal.
Yeah, it's like, okay, guy.
Anger issues.
And then much later, during the opening stanzas of World War II, he took his yacht and helped evacuate Dunkirk.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in fact, Mark Rylance plays basically Charles Lightoller
Oh,
in
interesting.
Dunkirk. Yeah.
Yeah, I never saw that, but
Yeah.
I want to see it.
Yeah, Mark Rylance, he has
Yeah.
like the two sons or whatever. Yeah, like that's basically Charles Lightoller, which was super cool. He, although he was a pipe smoker, lifelong pipe smoker. And during the Great Smog, the London Great Smog of 1952, he died at the age of 78 on December 8th, 1952.
Well, you're talking about Charles Lightoller?
Charles Lightoller.
I wanted to go back to the Robert De Niro voice, but he was English, so I feel like he would have been more like a, what's his name? The transporter guy. What's his fucking name?
Oh, Jason Statham.
Jason Statham.
Oh,
Jason Statham.
I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
I don't know about New Titanic.
Yeah.
That's the best I can do.
Yeah.
Titanic.
Yes, I was on board the Titanic.
Yeah, that's all right.
I shot a bullet at it. Yeah.
That's not bad. That's not bad.
That was great.
Then I helped at Dunkirk. Yeah.
Badass.
Something I think is really funny. Well, not funny, but like the reaction from the black community at the time was muted, where they weren't as sad as everyone else.
They're like, hey, bunch of white folks died.
They discriminated against black people being on the ship. Like
Right.
there was one. You know why? There was one passenger on there with his kids because his wife was white and his uncle.
And he was fucking royalty.
Well, yeah,
Right.
he was fucking Prime Minister of
Yeah.
Haiti at the time.
Yeah.
And so like Leadbelly, the blues pioneer of blues.
Yeah.
He wrote a song called "The Titanic."
Oh.
And he talks about, I don't know how true this is, but he talks about Jack Johnson in the song, the boxer, during the Great White Hope era.
You're right, yeah.
Right? That came up in the Wyatt Earp episodes.
Yeah.
He has a line in there, in this song. Quote, Jack Johnson want to get on board. Captain said, I ain't hauling no coal. Crying, fare thee, Titanic, fare thee well. End quote.
Cool.
Yeah, and so like he basically brings up like that if Jack Johnson wanted to ride the Titanic, he wouldn't be able to, and that
Right.
when it sunk, Jack Johnson must have been like, well
Fuck
then,
it.
fare thee well,
Yeah.
Titanic. Fuck you. You don't
Yeah.
want me on board, kind of a deal.
Yeah.
And that's how they kind of saw it too. It wasn't like they were happy.
Right.
It's
They're
just that like
I'm gonna fuck.
yeah. It's like
Bunch of rich white folks died.
yeah. Now,
Boo-hoo.
as you might be aware, they searched a long time for the wreckage of the Titanic. And that's kind of a story in of itself, looking for the Titanic itself. James Cameron does a great job in his multiple documentaries talking about how they found it.
He also made a movie about the Titanic.
Yeah, just go look at those. They do a really good job at doing that. But they did find it on September 1st, 1985. And they wanted to kind of keep the coordinates a secret for a long time because they didn't want treasure hunters to go down there and get like
The heart of the ocean.
the jewels, the Astor jewels and those pearls.
Well, if they get
and
down there
stuff
and they
that
get
were
the heart
lost.
of the ocean, then they have control over Davy Jones.
Yeah.
And then And then they can...
And then
again,
Johnny
again.
Depp.
wrong movie.
Yeah.
Then you have control over the Kraken.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Titanic.
Yeah.
When Rose finally gives over her control of the Kraken at the end, and
Well, then they have to go back because Johnny Depp goes into the Kraken. They have to try to see if they can get back to him.
yeah, that's
Right.
They have
yeah.
to go to At World's End, you know,
Yeah,
to get Captain
yeah,
Jack
that's
Sparrow
where he
back.
is.
Yeah.
He's at the world's end.
Yeah. Well, when they went down there, you know, they didn't. There's a lot of people that were like, "Are you gonna find bodies down there?"
No.
Like, no, you're not, because there's a lot of
Right.
things that eat the bodies, right?
I would if
Yeah.
I were a fish.
Yeah. But one thing that's amazing and moving is that the one thing they didn't, all the fish and bacteria didn't eat was the shoes. So the shoes stay where the people were.
Weird.
Yeah.
How
So
do they not just float around?
Right.
Or are they inside, kind of
well,
in caverns?
they're
and stuff?
inside. So like remember like the woman and her two children? Mm-hmm. They found a little area where there were, you know,
Two kids.
two women's shoes next to two,
Yeah.
you know, child shoes.
Right.
And so there must have been a woman standing there with two children. You know,
Okay.
it's almost like ghosts of where
That's hella
they
spooky.
stood. You know, and they found a lot of them, a lot of shoes like next to each other. You know,
Yeah.
and it's haunting. You know, to like see these shoes down there.
You remember that shoe from Nope? The
Yeah,
one that's
dude.
sitting vertical?
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into that, but
Yeah. But yeah, the shoes. I just think that was, I don't know, just incredible. As
Weird.
like a last thing that they sort of found. They confirmed a lot of things too when they went down there, how it broke and things like this. But the shoes was one thing that really stuck with me.
yeah, I get that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, my friends, is pretty much
Oh, we end on
the story
shoes.
of the Titanic. Yeah.
Dead body shoes.
If you want to know more, you know, there was so much I had to leave out. There's
Yeah.
a lot of books written about this, but if you want to know more, check out our sources. All those books that are listed down there are fantastic. I
much-
didn't read one bad book from this. so-
How much of the Titanic is still down there? Like all of it? They don't. Did they
A
bring
lot
every
of
day
it. I mean,
up?
it's,
Or?
it's breaking down. Well, they did. There were a lot of people since it sank that wanted to raise it.
Yeah.
You know, it's impractical to do so.
I feel like it's. I mean, it's crumbling
impossible.
apart as.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I was just wondering if like pieces of it have been brought up or.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They brought up pieces. They brought up artifacts.
Mm-hmm.
There was I posted this in the Discord. There was a blood-covered
Oh, I saw that.
life vest that
Yeah.
sold for a bunch of money at auction. There's only 6 of them, I think, to be known in existence.
the
Life
life
vests?
vests.
The life vest.
The blood one is pretty.
The one with blood on
Yeah,
it.
that was
and it's
pretty
like,
interesting.
fuck, man.
That's
Like,
nuts.
That's heavy
Yeah.
shit, dude. You know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, they brought up some artifacts and things like that, you know? Some money.
Did they
have,
find the heart of the
wet
ocean?
money. No.
Nah.
No.
Did they find the naked picture of Rose?
No.
No. That was
That's
on
something
paper.
I never. Yeah, it's on paper, like in charcoal. Like, how did that survive?
Did it survive in the movie?
Yeah,
I don't
They
remember.
Yeah.
hose it off, even
It was in a safe,
The
still.
but it was wet. Like it was definitely wet.
It's waterlogged.
if it was wet at all, then it wouldn't. No.
No, the
Probably
all,
not.
all the charcoal would have
I don't
come
even.
off.
I don't even remember that. I remember the part where they draw it because you see your boobies.
Oh, yeah.
Right,
and I was 14.
It's
Yeah.
basically in the beginning when they find it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And they
like-
find the drawing.
That's how they end up. That's why she ends up on the boat.
Yeah.
Because she's like, that's me.
I haven't seen that movie in 25
Because they
years.
showed like everyone on TV like a naked picture of her.
She's
I
like,
know.
She was like, yeah,
She's like, that's me.
that's me.
I used to look like this.
I used to look like this.
Believe it or not,
like-
that's me.
And if you don't believe me, I'm going to send the Kraken after you. Because she's got the heart of the ocean.
And then
Yeah.
they're like, hey, lady, come meet us on the ship in the
She's like-
exact location where the Titanic sank.
Yeah.
And tell us
Can't
about
be haunting for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And tell us about
If you
it.
talk shit, I'll release the Kraken.
Yeah.
It'll eat this whole submersible.
Yeah.
And it did.
Yeah.
And that's how it ended?
That's how it ended.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were
for
all
sure.
eaten by the Kraken.
The Kraken.
Yeah. And then they had to go to Outworld's End to
To-
find him again.
Yeah.
Right.
And Johnny Depp was there.
Johnny Depp was there
Yeah.
with Orlando Bloom.
I just watched the other day the alternate ending of Titanic where they
Get eaten by a
catch
Kraken?
her. Yeah. They catch her trying to throw the heart of the ocean over.
No, like, no,
Yeah.
No,
And they're,
that's going to be a lot of
trying
money.
to get it back.
we're gonna
Yeah.
pawn this.
And
We're
then
gonna pawn this. That would be
sell it
worth
at
so much
auction.
fucking money, like pawning it.
yeah,
Would be a waste. Like, I'll give you $1,000.
it's on Pawn Stars.
The best I could do is $1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, this priceless like Titanic heirloom with like
It controls the Kraken.
Yeah.
I'm not letting go of that. That's
Yeah.
just what I believe now.
yeah.
Yeah.
I believe that the heart of the ocean was real,
Yeah.
and it can, in real life, in history, and it controls the Kraken, which is also real.
Yeah.
And now Britney Spears has it.
No, it
Because
is.
she got given
Oh,
she got
yes,
given it in her
she
music
did.
video, yeah.
So Britney Spears controls the Kraken, and that's why her father was trying to control her. It all makes sense.
He wanted to
yes.
control.
He wants, because if you control the Kraken, you control the sea.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Finally.
So anyway, that was our episode. Titanic
We
3.
figured it out.
Yeah, we figured it out. It's all about the Kraken. Usually it's Bigfoot, but this one's on the high seas.
Yeah.
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 So,
Changing it up.
yeah.
Bigfoot doesn't go out there.
Oh, he's afraid of the ocean.
For sure.
Because he knows about the Kraken. Come on, people. Jesus
Keep up.
Christ.
Keep up.
I am Christopher Whedon, and I'm a Kraken boy.
Nice.
Not the hockey team.
Not the hockey team. Even though they're like in the playoffs or
Yeah,
something.
they are.
They're like doing
Second
well.
year.
I
they're
have
in the
nothing against the
playoffs.
hockey team.
They're doing
Yeah.
great.
They're the
That's
hockey
a coincidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people are like, oh, he's from Seattle. That's why he's obsessed with the Kraken.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. It's because of that
existed
Pirates of the
before
Caribbean
that.
movie.
Because you're
Yeah.
obsessed with Pirates of the Caribbean.
It's my favorite movie. The Kraken's not even the first one, which is really the only good one.
Yeah, the first
Yeah.
one is the best.
The second one gets pretty muddled.
Yeah.
I watched it recently. It gets pretty muddled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've never seen anything past the third one.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, there's
That's it.
more. Right.
oh, there's way more.
Right.
And they're
Yeah.
probably going to make more now that everybody's decided that Johnny Depp's fine and Amber Heard's not. So
Yeah.
there'll be
Right.
more.
I guess.
I don't know. I wasn't there.
No.
And I'm Maddie Moon, and I am also History Boy. And I am also here to remind you that we have a Patreon if you want to support us. We have a few
Indeed.
tiers.
And I don't know if you noticed, I have a hungry cat in the background.
Oh my
Yeah.
god, yeah.
Yeah, and Patreon, you supporters, help me feed this cat.
And we're not getting by.
Yeah.
She
She's
will
like,
starve.
mention the Patreon. That's what she's saying
Yeah.
this whole
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about it. Yeah.
She
so,
literally meowed right there.
Yeah. See?
Hey! That's what she
Getting into the
does.
plants.
She's going for the plant because
No,
she's
she-
hungry.
Yeah. No, she fucks with the plants because she knows I'll give her attention.
Yeah. Oh, cats do that all the time.
Yeah.
They know exactly what will get
Yeah,
attention.
they know how to press buttons.
Oh yeah.
I'll leave all that in.
Yeah, we have a Patreon with a few different tiers if you want to support us.
Indeed.
And we're also on Instagram at History Boys Podcast. And we have an email.
historyboyspodcast@gmail.com.
Right, okay, yes.
Hit us up there. That's the best place to hit us up, to be honest. Or our
Yeah.
DMs. But yeah.
Right, or
Email.
DMs,
Just
yeah.
slide into our DMs.
Yeah, we love hearing from you guys.
Slide into our emails. Nobody ever says that.
No.
You don't slide into emails. Just send an email like a fucking nerd.
It's it's jarring to get an email.
Yeah.
It's not sliding.
I
It's
scream way
it's
too loud.
stabbing.
Yeah.
Every time I get an email notification, it spooks the hell out of me.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like,
Jump out of my skin.
Jesus Christ, who emails anymore?
Yeah. You guys email us.
But please email us.
That's the best way to go. It's the best way to go. Sorry.
Yeah, we like hearing from you. We like hearing from our listeners, and
Indeed.
yeah,
Yeah, you can join our Discord if you're on the
Yeah.
Patreon. That's always fun. Post photos of whatever we're covering and whatnot. Yeah, I am Jerry Nash, your humble history boy as always. Thank you so much for listening. Had a lot of fun with this one. We have a lot more planned for y'all. I hope you're gonna enjoy it. We love all of our listeners, especially our Patreon listeners, because they keep this show going.
They keep the shipper running.
They keep the ship tearing ass through the ice fields.
hell yeah.
They're the ones shoveling in the coal. I think
Yeah.
we've already made that.
We made
joke.
that
Did we say
exact
that?
analogy
Okay,
last
there
time,
you
but
go.
it's a solid one.
It's
so
a
I'm
solid
okay.
one. Yeah.
I'm okay with doing it again.
Stays.
All of our lurker listeners, of course, we all love you as well. Maddie.
Love you. Bye.
time. Or I guess he wants whatever.